Without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to two characters who you probably already know. One of them is named Nick the Knife Fuentes. He's a Christian nationalist, race realist, which just means racist, authoritarian. He's not schizophrenic. He's actually very intelligent, which is part of the problem. But he is a part of the America First movement, and he has a movement of tens of thousands of young boys, or well, young men, I should say, who watch him, and hundreds of thousands of post-recorded views, which is what makes him politically relevant. Alex Jones is a conspiracy theorist who runs the TV show InfoWars, most famous for saying that the Sandy Hook massacre was a hoax and then losing tens of millions of dollars in court because he effectively defamed all of those people. So, yeah. That's who we're going to watch talking about modern politics, probably in reference to the state of Israel, and we'll take it from there. Without further ado, let's do the segment.
I really just wish there was some way, like Trump wants to stop all this.
Right.
I mean, I want the Jews to live in peace, all this stuff.
I want to decouple.
I mean, look how many Jews are totally pro-Muslim and pro-Palestine.
Right. I mean, most.
That's where I get the issue about, like, saying, if you think Jews were teleported to Mars, every Jew on Earth, that would handle all the problems.
I think that if that happened, a lot of obstacles to nationalism would disappear. Yes.
To me, the mad scientist group above it all is really who we're dealing with. And their philosophy is transhumanism, eugenics. And so, to me, people go, oh, it's not globalism, it's the Jews. The globalists call themselves globalism. That's from their own documents. Remember, I was talking about 30 years ago, nobody talked about globalism. Right. Now it's like, what it is. And you can talk about who runs it and who the top people are. People go look at that for themselves. But I'm just saying, I oppose these big unelected banks and corporations taking over. I want to abolish the private Federal Reserve, or I want to nationalize it. And I don't make it about who runs it or who it is. I just, step over that and just say, I don't like the policies of these unelected group running things.
When you look at, you talk about like the asset managers, the banks. I mean, who runs BlackRock? It's Larry Fink. When Bill Ackman, who's a liberal, lifelong donor to the Democratic Party, when he saw October 7th, he flipped over to the Republican side because he knew the Republicans would arm Israel. Lifelong Democrat flipped to Republican because they would arm Israel, the so-called, good ones who are on our side that don't like Muslims. Bill Ackman worked with Larry Fink to blacklist anybody that graduates from the Ivy Leagues who criticized the Palestinians. Bill Ackman said we have this problem of pro-Palestine students at Harvard, Yale, UPenn, Columbia. He went to Larry Fink and said, we got to make sure none of these guys can ever get hired in finance. That's the kind of chokehold they have over the system. Same thing with the ADL. They want Jonathan Greenblatt out, and you say, oh, well, some Jews don't like the ADL. They don't like Greenblatt. They just want a different chair of the ADL who's going to be better at shutting down anti-Semites who say, Jews are loyal to Israel. They support the wars in the Middle East. So I'm saying we need to decouple. We need to recognize Judaism hates Christ. It has antipathy towards Europeans. And we need to decouple from them as a civilization. They could go and be in Israel, that's fine. But, it really gives me a lot of concern. They put bombs in the pagers, and they're involved in procurement for the U.S. military. Palantir, all these new generation defense contractors, they're all over Unit 8200. They're all over Ehud Barak over there in Israel. It's filled with shadowy corporations that are funneling their technology into our country. We're going to trust them in our
Well, I'll say this about Palantir. It's all really the hot thing to say it runs everything and it's so big. It's tiny compared to the other AI companies and defense stuff. It is trying to make a run at getting a bunch of big contracts. And so I'm not defending what it does. My point is, compared to all these other big companies, it's tiny. And that's why you see the left attacking it a bunch too. So I see a
Okay, let's pause and break some of this down, because honestly, I think that this is so complex and so dense very early on that unless you're involved in the schizophrenic internet or mainstream politics, even there's a bunch of mainstream references here that effectively you're going to be lost. So let me go ahead and break this down for the audience. So I already mentioned how Nick Fuentes is a Christian nationalist. He's a race realist. And then Alex Jones is a conspiracy theorist. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this, but I do want to make this point real quick. We did a Jordan Peterson analysis of masculinity, and he appealed to the shepherd, which was tough enough to fight predators, resourceful enough to survive, capable of nurturing and defending the vulnerable. That's what he identified as masculinity. And I just want to compare this real quick before I delete this. Hassan Piker's version of masculinity is 1, being confident, 2, liking weapons, 3, inhaling supplements, 4, nicotine pouches, 5, liking LeBron James, 6, being comfortable in women's clothing. That's insane. That is never going to appeal to like cis, white, heterosexual, straight guys. So throw that in the garbage, okay? Now we'll get into what these guys are saying, which I think is the crux of the segment, okay? Or at least it's the beginning of the segment. So Alex Jones is saying that the main thing that he cares about is transhumanism and eugenics, which is interesting because I think that there's a steelman for eugenics of effectively like incentivizing good birth. And what I mean by that is paid parental leave, making sure that women can take all the supplements that they need to, making sure that they're able to financially prioritize their pregnancy over working, making sure that, let's say that CRISPR comes online, which is gene editing. I'm not saying that we should jump both feet into gene editing, but if there's the ability to eliminate diseases like Tay-Sachs, which is a genetic disorder that effectively births somebody who is only going to live less than a year and their entire life is going to be suffering because they have just enough to stay alive with supportive machinery, but they don't have enough to thrive in any kind of way, then I would want to look into CRISPR in order to eliminate Tay-Sachs disease. I kind of joke, I'm a Warhammer 40,000 science fiction nerd. This is a science fiction universe in which they've gene edited 8-foot tall, 400-pound demigods of war. I would be interested in doing that long term. So him talking about transhumanism, I think what Alex Jones is concerned with is that we're going to evolve past humanity and that our morality will be totally screwed up by trying to constantly evolve past what we already are. So I understand what he's saying, but I think that there's potential strong points in these ideologies or ideas. Obviously, don't go too far with it. But anyways, Nick Fuentes wants to decouple us from Israel. I don't think that's possible, but he can want it, I guess. That's not like the biggest deal in the world. Alex Jones wants to talk about the ideas, specifically transhumanism and eugenics, as problems that globalists want to push on us. And then Nick Fuentes, because he's brilliant at this, picks several Jews, Larry Fink and Bill Ackman, who flipped to MAGA because of the October 7, 2023 attacks. And then he thinks that Jews are primarily loyal to Israel over the United States, in that they have antipathy towards, or they hate Christ and antipathy towards Europeans. And then he doesn't trust Israel being so involved in our defense industry. That's what's going on so far. There's a lot of more specific words that they used, but that's a summary of it. Okay. So for now, I kind of want to let them dig in because they're hitting on so many ideas without digging in. It's hard to respond necessarily when we don't know what they think yet. Nine Ung says, become Astartes. I mean, unironically, if I could, I would. Base and Emperor Pilled? Yeah. Sapient Green says, I don't know if CRISPR is the point where human gene editing could or should begin, but maybe the next generation or the one after that. Exactly. Like we should be doing animal trials for prolonged periods. We should see what the cancer rates in edited animals are. And we also need to minimize suffering the entire time that we're doing experimentation. And then if we have like, let's say that we, I don't know. Let's say that we did it with like chimpanzees or something like that, where chimpanzees, we were successfully able to edit away genetic diseases from chimpanzees. And then we studied the lifespan of edited versus non-edited chimps. And the edited chimps ended up being like healthier, stronger, smarter, less cancer, less genetic diseases, and you had 1 or 2 generations that were perfectly healthy. Then at that point, I would be like, okay, we can start looking into gene editing of humans while strictly regulating it and also checking on the secondary effects, because there's always going to be secondary effects. Nine Ung says the women will have to stay women. Sorry, ladies. Probably. Razzle Smasher says, I despise Hassan, but he, the Bernie or Busters, the pro-Hamas protesters helped me realize that I'm center-left liberal and not a far-left progressive. I dislike them almost as much as I do MAGA. Good. Razzle, you and I, we are on the same team. Let's give them more room to swim, I guess. Palantir is I think it's the teal AI that is trying to feed Department of Defense information back and forth across the DoD in order to make sure that the United States wins the information war. That's the AI that they're talking about with Palantir, but they haven't demonstrated that it's actually capable of what they want it to be capable of. They've just said that this is what we're researching and this is what we want to do.
Weird alliance with kind of the anti-Israel folks and the left with the Muslims. And like Palantir, it's the big thing. I mean, its contracts are tiny compared to the other stuff.
But what Palantir is a privatization of the surveillance state. They work for the CIA. They come from the CIA.
What I've seen is Palantir has been trying to reform the government contracting process.
They're trying to make it more competitive and more efficient, but what they're doing is they're funneling all of our data into the government. Clearview AI is part of that suite. They ripped everybody's faces off of Facebook. Palantir's involved in Gaza doing facial recognition so they know which Palestinians to blow up with drones. And JD Vance is the protege of Peter Thiel, who's the co-founder of Palantir. That's like George Bush all over again. That's like George Bush, head of the CIA, being Reagan's vice president.
So you don't like Vance? I think Vance is awesome.
Oh, I think he's terrible. I don't. First of all, I think he's fake. Everything about him is fake. His name's fake. His venture capital career's fake. His story's fake. He's a fake Marine. He's a fake populist.
A fake Marine?
He did press releases. He wrote press releases and news releases.
Well, I mean, he was over in Iraq. He never said he was a war hero.
Well, he wasn't in combat, but he makes.
But he's not like Senator Blumenthal that was never out of the country and said he was in combat in Vietnam. He ran the toys.
Yeah. This is where Nick goes too far, where he's not on a solo program where he can just talk smack without being challenged. So Palantir is a privatization of the police state. This is actually potentially true, okay? So Grassroots Hegemon says Palantir is a Thiel thing, and it's an information garnerer. Do not buy Palantir. It's got the highest PE ratio I've ever seen in living memory. I'm not a financial guy, so I wouldn't even be capable if I could. But Palantir is a privatization of the police state. So just to describe this real quick, Palantir is effectively trying to, in the military, there's information that you need across the battlefield. Here's the target. These are the weapons that it has. This is its capabilities. We have these weapons. What's the best way to take it out? And what Palantir is supposed to be able to do, not that it's capable of doing this right now, but it's capable of generating what the best weapon systems are, what the best approach is, what units are close, what are friendly, what are enemy, and generating that information both to the individual level, so a squad can kind of read a customized overview of the information necessary to complete the complete the mission, but also a commander can very quickly get that information and then make decisions based off of that information. And then what Palantir is trying to do, which I'm not saying it's capable of, but is possible, is that they're trying to make all the information secured to its correct level of classification. So if there's top secret information that needs to go to a general, it classifies and secures that information so it's communicated to the general in a specific way. Whereas if it's talking to, let's say there's like a news reporter who's working with a unit and they know that that unit is embedded with a journalist, then they'll send them like the information that they need in order to complete the mission, but they'll also send them stuff that doesn't involve top secret information so it doesn't get leaked to the journalist. So that's what Palantir says it will do. We don't know what it's going to do. But Nick is skeptical of all these AI bros because all these AI bros are effectively testing their technology in Gaza, and he thinks that JD Vance is emboldening them. In reference to JD Vance, he's a Marine. He went through 13 weeks of Paris Island. He deployed to Iraq. He did combat camera. No offense to my combat camera bros, but they're, what they did while everybody else was working out, while everybody else was doing PT, while everybody else was doing martial arts, they were off to the side taking pictures because they didn't want to participate in physical training or martial arts or go on ruck marches or whatever. So they would just use their camera as an excuse to get out of doing the hard stuff. Whether or not JD Vance was like that, I have no idea.
It's for Todd's program at the Senate. I mean, hold on. I know Vance. I followed him. He's always said, "Well, I was just over there in the press. I'm not like the real heroes." But he was in Iraq.
But he's over there the other week doing a photo shoot where he's shooting guns, hoorah, acting like he's some kind of combatant. He was a journalist.
Dude, I was a pogue. Nick is off base here, okay? I was a person other than Grunt. I love the M240 machine gun. I love the M16A2. I've never shot the A1, but the A1, the A2, the A4, the M4. I would love to shoot the Army's XM7. I would love to shoot the HK416 based, I forget what it's called, but the new rifle that the Marine Corps has. I would love to shoot all that stuff, and I would great time doing it. And on top of that, that was part of my Marine combat training that JD Vance also went to. So a Marine getting excited about blowing stuff up is not off base. I think Nick's wrong on this one. Alex Jones has to be on payroll of Palantir. The guy was way too interested in underplaying their role. We'll see. The U.S. military quite literally allowed visiting journalists and USO entertainers to shoot their guns. Well, right. That's I didn't find this to be a strong point, but I also don't want to jump down his throat immediately.
In the Marines, which is what they do. This is what these people do.
Well, hold on a minute. So if you go out and shoot guns, you're being a poser now? I mean, if you're...
I think he's a serious poser, yeah. I think he's trying to make it seem like he's some kind of, yeah, absolutely.
So he's like Tampon Tim, think you put shotgun in the shotgun?
I think that's...
I don't think that's fair.
Well...
He's never said he was in a combat Marine.
He might not have...
Yeah, see, an unruly Kurd says the M27 IAR is sick. Dude, I forgot what the M27 was called, but I knew that it was sick. So, sorry, let me just show you, because there were a couple of young ladies with young men in their lives who they wanted to understand stuff. So I'm a former Marine. I was using effectively what's muskets compared to what the modern guys have. But this is the new Marine rifle. A lot of people complain because it's so heavy. But what it does is, instead of relying on what's called direct gas impingement, where there's a tube that flows all the way back here and then shoots gas into this area. So the bullet explodes, it shoots gas forward, the bullet leaves the chamber, the gas goes back through a tube and then unlocks the bolt in order to chamber the next round. This one is piston driven. So it goes forward and then a little bit of gas is allowed to enter in here, but then it hits a piston head and then the piston head rocks the entire rifle. So the piston system is viewed as more reliable than what's called direct gas impingement. So this thing is more reliable. And then the M27 is heavier, more reliable, but you can also customize it. Like, look at this. They have a shorter barreled version. They have a DMR version. They have a machine gun version where you can throw a drum on it. And so as a result, it's a heavier rifle, but it can do more jobs because it's a heavier rifle. So just for the moms out there who might be watching the program.
Said that, but I think that's sort of the... Do people know that he was writing press releases, or do they think that he's some kind of a Marine, that he was doing missions, or I think he's creating the perception that he's out there fighting bad guys or something.
The government fears Alex Jones, who has the largest audience in the country, bigger than any of the networks, the biggest megaphone in the country.
The deep state hates Alex Jones with a vengeance.
Alex Jones is the most extraordinary person I've ever met.
Okay.
Well, you find him at Nick J. Fuentes on Rumble and on X, so many other places at Nick J. Fuentes. And he is in studio with us for the next hour and 53 plus minutes. And it should be a lively discussion, debate, always great. You know, I've been inviting you on the show for a few weeks, trying to get you on, and you were too busy. You said, nope. You texted me last Friday. You said, how about next Friday? And you said you were going to be in Texas, so you're here. And it's great to have Nick Fuentes with us. Obviously, one of the most attacked and demonized people out there. Very, very controversial. One of the biggest interviews ever was you and I Love Hitler here. Yay.
All right, just bringing this up. So we have Razzle Cherry. He's our guest groyper. So everybody play nice. He's a nice groyper. Okay, lots of groypers are very rude and abrasive, but Razzle Cherry is very polite. So everybody be polite to Razzle Cherry. Just bear in mind, if you criticize Nick Fuentes, he might have something to say to you. Christian Valeria says, replace the M249 right when SIG won the Army Infantry and Rifle competition with the XM7. Yep. And then Alex makes for great edits. To be fair, far-right fascists make great edit propaganda. Well, you know, Alex is, I don't think he's a fascist. I think he's like a libertarian anti-statist bro. But obviously, sometimes I think he's a useful idiot for more authoritarian people than him. Sacred Snow says, JD opens himself up to attacks on his military service by attacking others for their military service. Yes and no. Listen, Marine Corps, I was kind of joking about this. There's a lot of special forces bros who are a part of Valor Media Network. And I respect the hell out of all their service because I could not do what they do. Okay. I hate cardio. It takes a certain level of dedication to get through special forces that I think my bones have been ground to dust just by Marine Corps service. Okay. So there's no way that I would have made it into MARSOC or SF or the SEALs or whatever. I would have been like, listen, my bones are exploding. I'm out. Right. Now, that being said, I think even the special forces guys, when I said I was a Marine, they were like, oh, and the reason why is because like Marines are famous for being able to like slam your head into a brick wall and then like the brick wall will break first, right? Marines have a very tenacious attitude and mentality that has won them battles throughout, the wars, or throughout history and their wars. So dogging on JD Vance for being like a pogue Marine, you can dog on him a little bit, but it's not going to hit with anybody who's a Marine, I'll tell you that. Razzle Smasher says, reminder that the audience that Razzle Cherry is the Fuentes defending Groyper, and I'm the liberal who does AI slop of funny streamer moments. True. Razzle Smasher and Razzle Cherry are alternative people. So yeah. Ali, my favorite Hassan stan. He says 56 viewers means 56 likes. Indeed. Please like the stream. That way people know we're live. Sorry for yapping so much, but I do parasocially love you guys. I do enjoy engaging with you on chat. Thank you for all the donations already today. I genuinely do appreciate it. Let's get back into the content.
That was certainly interesting. And, my perspective on this is...
Sorry, he made a reference that I didn't address. Kanye West has lost his mind and hangs out with Nick Fuentes on occasion. Kanye West and Nick Fuentes went on to Alex Jones and talked about how Hitler was not that bad of a guy, and it was a viral train wreck.
You can't be mad at Nick J. Fuentes for the things he says when you have the left and the corporate media all saying white people are inherently evil and all of their racism. I'm not endorsing, all the different permutations of that from any of the sides, but the idea that the response people are seeing back from that is somehow unwarranted. I'm trying to bring everybody together, and I think it's important to. And I would have the leftist on this show; they would come on, but other people like Smoley, they just won't do it. But you will actually come and have discussions.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's an equal and opposite reaction. The country's been super far left for such a long time. You got crime, degeneracy, mass migration, globalism. I mean, this is what gave...
Come on, man. All right. Sorry. Nick is so dense. Crime, degeneracy, mass migration, globalism. The government has been super far left for a long time. Gov has been left. Okay. So listen, he can make arguments that the United States government has been infinitely more like libertarian or liberal. And in that respect, the government has been quote unquote more left than he wants it to be for a long time, because even the Bushes, he would view the Bushes, Bush Republicans as left wing. I'm not kidding, because they're liberals who support the Constitution of the United States and who believe in the rule of law. They're too left wing for Nick Fuentes. Okay. So that's what he's saying there. And then he's saying that effectively the insanity of the progressives, no offense, progressives, we love all our progressives who are here. However, because of the insanity of progressives, Nick Fuentes is the embodiment of the equal and opposite reaction to the far left politics of the past decade or two. Then he says crime, degeneracy, mass migration, and globalism. Okay. I will agree with degeneracy. Okay. I will show you real quick something that pisses me off. And if you're sex positive, that's totally fine. I don't care. It doesn't have to piss you off. I'm just saying it pisses me off. Miley Cyrus strap-on performance. Okay. So Miley Cyrus, this to me is like peak degeneracy. Okay. She's naked. These are either silicone covers or her breasts are out, and she's wearing a dong, and this is how she's performing. Okay. So for me, this is degeneracy. Okay. It's nudity, it's degeneracy, it's whatever. Okay. Now, the thing about crime, though, homicide rate by year, what we can see is that in the 1960s, we were down to 5 per 100,000. Then when the drug war kicked off, we got up to 10 per 100,000, which is too high. And then we got back down in the era of quote unquote mass incarceration. We got back down to 5. And then I don't know what the rate is here, but it looks like we jumped up to like 7 during COVID, something like that, right? but now we're trending back downwards. And so when you're talking about crime, I don't have a problem if you talk about California in particular and their challenges with property crime. I don't care if you talk about like how mass incarceration is effectively like a Band-Aid on a gunshot wound. I don't care if you want to reform police or reform our judicial system. That's all good. But pretending that we are at like the peak of the drug war levels of violence is just not true. Okay. Even I think we just saw before I clicked off that the peak, which was 2020, when bear in mind, tons of people were unemployed, tons of people didn't have money, tons of people were locked down at home and had nothing better to do. Law enforcement had several controversial incidents that led to riots. The peak of violence in the modern era was 7.8 per 100,000. Okay. So pretending that we are in a crime wave is simply inaccurate. Mass migration, we can argue about. Globalism, we can argue about. So I'm sorry for going on that rant, but I do find it a little crazy that we effectively have one of the best times to be human on the planet. We obviously have real challenges. I'm not saying we don't have real challenges, but it's one of the best times to be alive on the planet. And Nick is acting like it's all over, right? It's not over. It's not even close to over. It's actually relatively okay. Okay. So anyways, just wanted to share that. It is a sickness. True. All right. So anyways.
Fries to people like yourself in one generation, people like me in the next. We respond to the need. The world is undergoing a horrible revolution. I think horrible changes, or I think has been for a long time. And we're the counter revolution. We're the counter movement. We're the reaction. So I totally agree with you. And I want to make it clear, you are a champion of free speech. I know a lot of people give you a hard time. Some people question, whether you're 100% legit, but you are legit. You always have been. So, and you've always given me a platform on the show.
Sure. Actually, sorry, we're getting a little bit of challenges in chat, so let's go ahead and do it. You didn't address mass migration. So what's happened over the past 200 years, this is how I would categorize mass migration, is that in the past 200, 300 years, we invented a lot of things as a part of the Industrial Revolution. One of those things was broad access to contraception and condoms. And so the sexual revolution of the 1960s, along with the increase in availability of condoms over the past, 150 years, has effectively made it so every developing and developed country has trended to around 2 children per 100,000, I think is the thing for the birth rate. We're trending to 2.15. What actually, hold on, before I say per 100,000, I might be thinking of the wrong stat. How is birth rate calculated? Let's take a look at that. Because I know 2.15 is demographic replacement. The crude birth rate is calculated by dividing the number of live births in a given year by the total population for that year, then multiplying by 1,000. This results in the number of births per 1,000 people. The total fertility rate, which is a related measure, calculates the number of births per 1,000 women of childbearing age 15 to 49. So let's see, what is the U.S. fertility rate? 1.66. So we should be angling for 2.15. Okay. Sorry to say it to women, but Canada, 1.26, 1.33. This is embarrassing. Okay. This is sad. These numbers are embarrassing. The mere fact that we're at 1.66 is also embarrassing. We should be at 2.15. However, what happened is our economic models are based off of perpetual growth. And so what happened was in the 1960s, along with a revolutionary perspective on race and race relations, there was also probably an economic incentive in order to import people into the country in order to make sure that our economy was constantly growing. And so we rewrote our immigration laws in the 1960s in order to allow more different kinds of people from all over the world. And so as a result, we've used immigration in order to replace our declining birth rate in order to make sure that the economy is constantly expanding. So regardless of whether or not you think that's good or bad, regardless of whether or not you would like to be like the Japanese and just let your population collapse and you'll figure it out by automating everything and letting robots do all the work, you can have different perspectives on how we should handle the fertility and mass immigration crisis. But if you asked me what's my best guess, that's my best guess. That's what I think we did. We replaced a declining birth rate with immigration. Nine Un says, Matt, Midas Robin. Oh, okay, thanks. I don't really follow celebs anymore. Oh, okay, cool. You guys are enjoying each other. Start pumping out the Higlets. If Higlets is human mixed with piglets, I agree. We also use immigration for our military. Agreed. And by the way, I parasocially and actually love, I served with a Haitian guy named Teddy Laguerre. He was one of the best human beings I've ever met in my entire life. I served with a Mexican guy named Salas, S-A-L-A-S. He's second generation Mexican, but he's still Mexican. Great dude. One of my best friends. I could still call him to this day, and he's one of the best friends, my best friends on the planet. Villa from a different unit who was Mexican. One of my favorite guys on the planet. I have black dudes that I deployed with, trying to think of some other things without doxing them, but like Van Loo, Red, Carter, whole bunch of dudes who like I genuinely love. I love them like brothers. They're fundamentally good human beings. So when people try to get me to like, I'm not going to hate somebody because of immutable characteristics, because I already love so many people from different areas of the world. Grassroots Touchmon says Miley Cyrus' wooden dog was on my 2025 bingo card. A soldier called Laguerre. Yes. For those of you who don't know, Laguerre literally means war in French. So his name was Theodore the War. And then he joined a military institution. He was one of the coolest guys on the planet, honestly. One of the coolest human beings on the planet. I love that guy. I also went to boot camp with a guy named Dakota. They pronounced it Dakota, but his real name was De Coutu. So Decouteau, which is French for of the knife. So I went to boot camp with a guy named Of the Knife, and I served with a guy named Theodore the War. It was awesome. Razzle Cherry, our resident groyper, so take this with a grain of salt, says, it's crazy we've been gaslit as a country into bringing in other tribes and people in mass because we're all the same as our people and civilization dies. See, Razzle, like, people and civilization dies. I have 2 children. I am of Irish descent. I married an English woman ethnically, right? My civilization isn't dying. I'm a Republican. I believe in the Republic of the United States. So you're acting like because I served with the military, which had Haitians, Blacks, Hispanics join it, and I love those men, and we all served the Republic of the United States. And then because a bunch of Hispanics came into the country, that somehow means like Europeans can't be Europeans anymore, like ethnically. Like nobody's stopping you from being ethnically European. Like if you're German or whatever, go drink some beer, go wear some lederhosen, go do some yodeling. Like I'm not stopping you. Go do HEMA, high European martial arts. Go do some HEMA, drink some beer, wear some lederhosen, do some yodeling, marry a European gal. Nobody's stopping you. Anyways, yeah, go listen to Rammstein. True. All right, I'm sorry. I'm yapping. I'm giving a lot of flack to people in chat. My apologies. Vince Neal says, long live the Republic. We are the greatest successor of Rome. I agree. All right. Anyways, ethnically European, American spotted. So true, because you are supposed to divide it up by country. But listen, we're Euro mutts. Let's be real. Ann Sneed says, I was a military wife for 18 years, raised 2 half Korean stepsons. Yeah. And I'm sure they're brilliant. I hope they're brilliant. I hope they were nice to you. Anyways, sorry. I've been yapping with chat. That's my fault. Let's continue with it.
Joe, so I really appreciate that.
Well, I mean, I've seen you, I think, from memory, you say, well, he has said some of his family was, doing stuff with the government stuff. I've been saying that for 30 plus years is true. And that's how I grew up knowing the government was bad because they got out of it. So it's not like a secret. Look, we discovered that, his uncle worked for the CIA. Oh, we discovered, no, you learned it from me. And I learned this stuff from him.
Yeah, but okay, so we have a few Republican bros, people who love the Republic. Thank you, Sean Kaplan. Thank you, Ann Sneed. Thank you, Eric Dom. But Razzle Cherry is the guy that we're trying to convince, so I'm going to talk to him as well. Commander Ericott says, you can tell I watch Piker because I didn't know they were the same guy. Nice. Razzle Cherry says, your worldview is highly influenced by individualism. It is, but I'm also a communitarian. I want to build like I don't believe in just the individual, Razzle. I believe in the conflict between the community and the individual. And so just because we're taking people from multiple like ethno-religious backgrounds doesn't mean that I don't want to build like a shared public square in which we can interact and enjoy each other's company and enjoy third spaces together, right? You say that's not the way I see it. If my entire country is cooked and I'm yodeling in my not great apartment, I'm not happy. Razzle, I agree with you, but at the same time, what I would encourage you to do, because these forces are bigger than Nick Fuentes, they're bigger than Christian nationalism. Christian nationalism is a reaction that I'm sorry to share it with you, but it's going to be snuffed out by geopolitical forces that are 10 times more powerful than it, right? And so what I would say is, get out of your apartment, go to go to third spaces, go to bars, go to libraries, go to bookstores, go to this, go to that, go to churches, talk to the human beings there, and then just interact with them and enjoy their spaces. And I have a pretty good feeling that your sense of doomerism will be partially assuaged. I'm going to have 3 children, so one of you can have one child. I will have 3 children, and we'll balance each other out. Now that'll still be 2. But hopefully someone else will have 3 children, and then that other person can have 2 children, et cetera, et cetera. Eric Dom says, how are Hispanics not descendants of Europeans? I never understood that line of thought in the U.S. What language do they speak? Yeah, Eric Dom, I'm with you. The other thing that's crazy is, sorry, chat's actually being really interesting and kind of popping off a little bit. So what's wildly interesting is that people from Central and South America obviously speak Spanish and Portuguese, okay? So they're from, Brazil is primarily from Portugal, and then all the Spanish-speaking countries are primarily colonized by Spain. So they're a combination of Native Americans, so the people who should live here, and then Spanish colonization. And we act like the Northern European Americans act like Central American and South American Hispanics, who, again, are a combination of Spanish and Native American ancestry, are this like totally alien culture that we're totally incompatible with. Whereas they're European, they're Southern European, and they're Native American. Like, what the hell? Like what's the problem here? You know, we act like they're totally incompatible with European civilization when they're an offshoot of European civilization. Midas Robin says, I'm the mother of 7 children. Well, good job, Midas Robin. You up the white birth rate just off of that alone. All right, you guys are having fun in chat. I parasocially love you, but let's continue with the content, or else we're literally gonna have a 3-hour segment that's 10 hours of 10 minutes of Alex Jones and Nick Fuentes talking.
Right.
So,
well, yeah, I mean, I think that you're legitimate because I know you, I've met you, I've talked to you, and I think we're on the same page on some things, not so much on other things. But as you know, you do have intelligence families. Intelligence is generational. If somebody's dad or grandfather's in intelligence, typically they'll follow suit. And so I just find it a little bit interesting.
Sacred Snow, I don't want to dox myself, but I'm in Central Florida as well. So definitely join the Discord, DM me, whatever. We'll go shoot my bolter, which is a Warhammer 40,000 weapon. And then we'll make a Halo Magnum and a battle rifle. And as long as you promise not to Chris Kyle me, we can meet up.
Thing I have said on the show, when it's someone like yourself or someone like Tucker, who I've called out, he has a much more direct connection. His dad was running Voice of America, which is U.S. propaganda. And so I look at something like that, and I think any listener, any viewer has to discern and evaluate for themselves whether they think that's suspicious, whether they think that's cause for concern or not, or they evaluate whether that person's honest. But
well, I mean, in the case of Tucker, judge tree by its fruits, he's trying to stop World War III and did a great job. I think because, I mean, we have whistleblowers that come out of the FBI, out of the CIA. I think you have to look at what they're doing. And so, yeah, obviously people in intelligence are in families. That's why, I mean, Texas was the main recruiting ground out of any state when HUMET was the most important thing from World War II on to the 90s when it went to mainly signal. They use mainly digital stuff. They're going back to HUMET. Signal isn't as powerful as they said. And no, I mean, I've said when I would go to a family reunion, it would be like the Legion of Doom. They weren't like running around saying we're this, we're that, Army intelligence, all this stuff. But I mean, that's anybody that was officers in the military and actually did anything. But they were all telling people that the New World Order and the globalists, and then showing, like Fletcher Prouty exposing what happened to JFK first. I mean, almost bigger than the D out of New Orleans, Jim Garrison. I mean, he was like the head of covert operations, and he was the guy that they sent away during that and figured it out and went public. So it's also,
bro. Some of the stuff, like, I feel like I need to watch this more often. I'm sorry to say that out loud, but it's because what they're saying is so dense, okay? So in the past, like, couple of minutes, Nick Fuentes has said, Tucker Carlson and Alex Jones both come out of people who worked in the United States intelligence, and therefore he thinks that the audiences should be a little bit skeptical of what they say and evaluate whether or not they're plants or whether or not they do this or whether or not they do that. However, what Alex Jones is saying is like, well, you have to evaluate what we're actually doing because, let's face it, I'm just going to say it even if Alex can't say it, you're politically toxic. So just because we speak out against you doesn't mean that we're somehow like co-opted by the deep state or our families are actual like plants, right? So what Alex Jones is saying is that, his family reunions used to be the Legion of Doom. I would be upset if my family, there was a Russian... There was a CIA deputy director who had a son who traveled to Russia and fought on behalf of the Russians and got killed on the front lines within the past couple of weeks. And it's like, dude, I would cringe to death if my children became enemies of the United States. I would be like, I messed up super bad somewhere. And so as a result, like, I don't know. Alex is trying to say, like, I'm not a part of the deep state. I'm actually, like, genuinely concerned with them. Part of the reason why I'm concerned is because my family is the intelligence community. And so as a result, we used to do a lot of human intelligence. We moved to signals intelligence in the 90s. But because of 9/11, we moved back to human intelligence. And so Texas is a massive recruiting ground. This is all descriptively accurate. So I understand how Alex can probably seem compelling because he's describing actually fairly decent historical analyses of the way that the intel community in Texas developed over the past 100 years. I do find that interesting. Normally, I'm ready to dismiss him as like a schizophrenic, but that was an okay description of reality. I'm okay with that.
We know a lot of this because of whistleblowers. I mean, I had like Admiral Moore on before he died about the USS Liberty. I had the Judge Advocate General, who was a general who on right before he died. They would come on the show where they were dying. They would like die right after. They would say, oh, I'm having heart failure. I'll probably be dead in a month, but I'm going to say this. And I was on the phone with LBJ when he said, I want that goddamn ship at the bottom. And then all the anti-Israel folks go, look, he's saying LBJ did. He's covering up Israel. No, LBJ set it up with Israel to sink it, to blame Egypt, to attack it. It doesn't take away from Israel doing it. It actually shows it totally proven. And I was told it by the top generals. The former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, who was the head of the Navy at the time, became the higher up than that. They were all saw this. Right. And that's why I get irritated with the anti-Israel folks, because they make everything if it's not just Israel, only Israel does best. No, it's showing the whole thing.
So I would need substantiation for this. What Alex Jones is saying, which is a pretty aggressive claim, is that so we watched Candace Owens, and Candace Owens said that JFK was against Israel getting nukes. And so he was beefing with the Israeli prime minister about that. And so what ended up happening was LBJ was infinitely more friendly to Israel. And so, and there's also accusations that LBJ orchestrated the assassination of JFK. And so as a result, what he's effectively saying is LBJ takes out JFK in order to seize power, and then he sets up the USS Liberty incident where he tells Israel where the spy ship is in order to take it out so they can use that as a pretext in order to attack Egypt. So he's effectively saying that there's a Gulf of Tonkin incident on behalf of Israel, but the USS Liberty wasn't sunk sufficiently quickly in order to accomplish that, which is why the United States didn't go to war on behalf of Israel under the LBJ presidency. That seems pretty aggressive. I would need to see infinitely more evidence than I presently have. Razzle Jerry says, it has nothing to do with Nick and how controversial he is. Let Nick's words stand alone. If you're from an intelligence background that's suspicious, it's not a smoke and in the gun, but it's sus. Okay. Well, I'm from a military background. Is that sus? I'm a former law enforcement officer. Is that sus? I mean, I'm sure it's like sus to your area of the internet, but I pretty much like wear what I am on my sleeve, right? And I'm sure Alex would say that he does the same thing as well.
Right. Well, and I agree with you, but we're also, as your show suggests, in an information war. And so I just try to give people the coverage as somebody that does not have that pedigree. A lot of people don't realize, people that just watch the content, watch the stuff on TV, people that work normal jobs or working class, you know, they don't come from a government background. They just don't realize it is a different set of rules. They don't know, for example, that intelligence goes in generations like that. It is a different set of rules for the people that are in that big club, whether it's in DC, people are involved in the Pentagon, people involved in intelligence. And honestly, I don't trust a lot of them. I think you're right. There are whistleblowers. At the same time, I think that another tool that intelligence can use is to pose as a whistleblower, you know, to borrow a phrase, flood the zone with maybe false information or misleading information, partial truth, and it's our job as the audience to discern that. You know, so I don't consider it necessarily disqualifying if somebody is a whistleblower or was in government or intelligence, but I think they do deserve an extra bit of scrutiny, or at least those connections.
Well, I think with the UFO stuff, especially lately, that stuff's been clearly disinfo lately.
Oh, all day long. Well, and that's stuff that only ever comes from the Pentagon. You know, there's no UFO stuff that comes from anywhere else other than the DOD, the security apparatus, people like Harry Reid, who's a complete spook. You know, he was the one who was pushing that in the Senate for a long time. So that's exactly, it's a case in point. It's like, you can have whistleblowers. You can have people that are legitimately breaking with the system, class traders, whatever you want to call it. But then you also have this kind of other dimension. You have a parallel track that they run where they pose as the conspiracy theorist, they pose as the dissident, and you know, and that's not always the case, but sometimes it is, and that's why, like you say, you have to judge them by their fruits.
Well, yeah, and by that, people try to say that, you know, you're a Fed for the Southern Poverty Law Center or the ADL,
right? Well, exactly, and people say that about me, but the difference is I don't have parents that were in the CIA, so I know. You know, Tucker Carlson.
But I mean, certainly the government agencies recruit people that don't come from those families either.
That's true. But I think that sometimes I get looked at unfairly. People will consider me to be, you know, some kind of false entity or some kind of agent or something. When you don't look at maybe what's more obvious, what might be right in front of your face. The reason I bring up Tucker is because he pushed that about a year and a half ago in an article in the Gray Zone. He worked with Max Blumenthal. They published a three-part hit piece. It was about 10,000 words, calling me an SPLC agent, an agent of the federal government. And I look at the author of the piece. It's Max Blumenthal's wife. Max Blumenthal is the son of a hatchet man for Bill and Hillary Clinton, Sidney Blumenthal. So it's like I'm being called SPLC Fed by the son of a hatchet man for Bill Clinton.
Well, I wasn't going to go.
So hold on. So Alex might say the same thing that I'm going to say in a second, okay? So the accusations that Nick is a Fed comes from he was very involved in Stop the Steal. He ginned up the GROYPERS in order to go to January 6th. They went to January 6th. Some of them got, not the GROYPERS specifically, but there were plenty of people who got hammed up and arrested. Nick Fuentes, despite being, let's say, hyperbolic in some of his rhetoric, did not receive any kind of legal consequence for that. The legal consequence that he did have was he had a bunch of foreign donations from, I think specifically there was like a white nationalist French guy who killed himself, who had a bunch of like crypto, and basically gave him a bunch of crypto, like with his will, I guess, like killed himself and gave him hundreds of thousands of dollars so he could operate independently. And so I think some of those assets were frozen for a temporary period of time. And then as a result, you know, he kept, there was that like suspicion. And then the second accusation from him being a potential Fed is the fact that, what was the other part? Getting involved with Kanye and then trying to sanitize Hitler is the fastest way to get 95% of the audience to tune out. The second you're like, Adolf Hitler, the guy who, even according to Nick Fuentes, killed hundreds of thousands of people based off of immutable characteristics, and historically killed, I don't know, 6 to 10 million people for immutable characteristics or through wars that he started. That is the fastest way to get 90% of the world to turn against you. And so the question was whether or not Nick was getting all of these dissident right-wing people around him and then doing the most optically terrible thing in order to delegitimize his own movement. That was the question around him being a Fed. Yeah.
Go to this area because I don't know, and I'm not saying. I mean, we have people coming to your house trying to kill you on record, and then idiots go, "That's staged." No, the guy went and killed himself after that. I mean, got shot. I mean, it's all. We'll get to that in a moment. Some of that footage, but my issue is, you know, people bring up the clip from.
Dude, I own this crossbow. Effectively, the one that I have, with this one, I think you break down the M4 stock, and then there's a magazine right here that the crossbow loads from. And so it's a semi-auto crossbow. And then I think that's how you cock it. With mine, it has a double strap right here. So you can pull back the strap. And so it's effectively a semi-automatic crossbow. So this psycho, I think, killed 3 people, went to Nick's house, rang the doorbell, was waiting for him to come down, but he was streaming, so he didn't respond to the doorbell. And then as a result, Nick didn't get murdered, but Nick was on the verge of getting murdered 100%.
January 6th, where you're saying, all right, folks, go in the Capitol. Now, you weren't up at the fences breaking them down like Ray Epps. You weren't there the night before saying it. And then they said, well, why weren't you arrested for that? Well, I think it was because you weren't on the Capitol grounds.
Right. I was far away from the steps. And what's funny is the author who wrote that article, she didn't even know where I was. She called me for a comment on the piece to ask me about that video where I say, we're storming the Capitol, we're taking over. And I said on the phone, I said, do you know where I was on the Capitol complex? She said, no, I don't know. I said, well, I can send you a map and I can circle it and show you. I wasn't even close to the steps. I was totally far away. And that's the important context.
So what happened that day? Did you get caught up or just heard people gone in and were just excited about it? Or
So, yeah, I was there like you. I went to the speech on the ellipse. I think I was sitting actually right beside you at the White House speech, Trump's speech on the ellipse. I wasn't even planning on going to Capitol Hill, but as you know, Trump said on the stage, we're going to go and peacefully make our voices heard. And I said, oh, I guess this is what we're doing.
By the way, I told people that I broke that weeks before. I said, I've been told that Trump wants me to lead the peaceful march down there. And then the Secret Service comes and opens the thing and you saw it, brings me through.
Yes.
I don't think Trump was setting me up, but somebody was.
100%. And I saw that. I saw you leave early.
Come on, man. Come on. Okay. We'll break this down momentarily. Sorry, Ved Sunil, who has been a passionate chatter, asked me a question, and I feel like I at least need to address it. Any opinions on India-Pakistan? Seems like a niche issue in the West. Yeah, Ved Sunil. So the way that I think that I have a very lay understanding, which is effectively Hindus throughout history have gotten screwed over through colonialism. What happened first was with Islam spreading across a belt of Middle East, North Africa, and then into Asia. They effectively not bypassed, but they kind of bumped off of India, I guess, and really took like the northern part of it. And then there were areas that were settled by Muslims who ended up ruling large swaths of India, but a majority of their influence was in the south. And then they also had influence at the port cities on the west side of India, right? That's where a lot of Muslim influence ended up being for Muslim colonization. So what ended up happening was, I'm pro-Pakistan because they make India mad. Jeez, Razzle, relax, okay? But then what I understand is that I guess after the Declaration of Independence of India, because it was like a British colony for a long time, the Muslim northwestern area and northeastern area, I think the northeastern area became Bangladesh, or the eastern area became Bangladesh. And then am I saying that right? Is it Bangladesh? Let's take a look at the maps. Let's not be crazy. And then the western part became Pakistan, right? Now, the problem is that there's like a history of antagonism between the Hindu Indians and the Pakistanis, because this territory right here is in dispute, and specifically Kashmir, this northern territory right here, is effectively like half I don't know what the demographics are, but like half Hindu, half Indian. And so as a result, if there's going to be like terroristic violence, it's oftentimes on the west side of the country because Pakistan is right here and Kashmir is in dispute. And then I was right. Bangladesh is the Eastern majority Muslim country that was formed after the Declaration of Independence of India from England. So yeah, so I don't really have like an opinion, so to speak. I think everybody should leave each other the hell alone. So Pakistan should focus on internal development, and India should focus on internal development, and you guys should just draw firm borders and leave it alone. Whether there's so much more to do when it comes to like internal development of India and Pakistan than there is by gaining a few thousand square miles or square kilometers. I don't think that like India will be substantively enriched by having sole control of Kashmir, nor do I think that Pakistan will be substantively enriched by having sole control of Kashmir, right? So anyways, so that's my very lay non-answer to your question. Yep. All right. Anyways, I need to use the restroom, but I'm going to play the content. And the point is about what they're saying is like, I kind of can't believe that it's like the election is stolen, Trump deserves re-election, blah, 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 blah. But also it was a Fed setup. Like for me, these are contradictory perspectives. So it's kind of crazy for me to hear Alex Jones say that. I'm not surprised. I'm just surprised they haven't come up with a better narrative. So anyways, I'm going to use the restroom, but I'm going to play the content. I'll be right back. I'm going to pull this on for 2 minutes.
And I heard the same thing, and I said, "Oh, Jones is going, Trump is going." I said, "I guess this is what we're doing." And I went
leave early. They opened the thing right in front of Trump, and I went through there.
Yeah, I saw it. I watched it happen, and then I followed everybody up there. I went to Capitol Hill. We went on the lawn of the hill, or just outside of it, where there's two statues where it meets with that body of water. And somebody gave me a megaphone. I jumped up on a statue, and like we did in Georgia, like we did in some of the other state capitals, I was hyping the people up. I said, "All right, we're taking the Capitol," this and that.
And a lot of people, when we got there, even though there was tear gas, they were saying that too. There was an excitement.
Yes. But I was with a group that never even got close. I was with a group of about 20 people. And I said, "You know what, guys, we got to get out of here." I said, because they're throwing tear gas. I said, they're sending in Capitol Police. I said, we got to get out of here.
And you said, yeah, join people going in before that really started, or
when?
As soon as I got there, I ran there when I found out, because the phones weren't working well, but I finally got a text by some of our advanced security that had gone there. And they're like, you got to get down here and stop this. The people are fighting the police. Looks like provocateurs. So my Achilles was gone, but I kind of, like a fat person, bounced down the street in a jog. And I just immediately went up on top of a pile of chairs that hadn't been folded out yet. It was a big square of them, and said, don't go in. It's going to be Kent State. We're being set up, because I could really see that problem.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I turned everybody around after that. And, what people don't point out is I got put on a federal no-fly list after that. I got my bank account frozen. I got banned from Facebook, Instagram. I got subpoenaed by Congress a year later. So people always like to say, why didn't you get charged? Well, when you look at what people got charged with, they got charged with trespassing, insurrection in some rare cases. They got charged with conspiracy if they were part of a militia or some other organized group. And I said, I didn't fit in any of those categories. People say, well, you were inciting. Well, show me someone that got charged with incitement. People got charged with trespassing and a variety of other violent crimes, vandalism.
And entering the unauthorized federal building.
Right, which I didn't do. So,
well, so moving on from that, regardless, you have to look at the information people put out, and then that's it. There's far too much time, in my opinion, obsessing over who's this, who's that. But I want to move on to this next subject. I got a lot. You can bring up any subject you want. We got a lot of time, and you're welcome to. And I hope we should have checked. I don't know if you want to go in the war room today. I'm sure he wants you. So check with Owen. Can you do that if you want to go in the war room?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Gosh, I should. Every time we get a big guest, I need to remember to get them booked on the other shows. My fault. I always bitch the crew when they have a big guest. Why didn't you say get them on my show too? Vice versa. Then I'm worse than the crew.
All right, let's pause and just address this real quick. Listen, guys, if you're in Alex Jones or Nick Fuentes, that's totally okay. You're welcome in my chat. Come hang out. Just don't be rude, and I'll happily talk to you, right? My frustration with this is I feel like they can't nail down, like an actual narrative, okay? So when it comes to the narrative, it's like, yes, the election was stolen. Here's all these irregularities. No, we can't prove it for the past 5 years. However, we needed to stop the steal. We needed to back Trump in 2020. Yes, of course, we said a whole bunch of really hyperbolic things that got the crowd jazzed up in order to go in the Capitol. But we ourselves did not go into the Capitol. And as a matter of fact, it seemed like there was like federal and law enforcement people who were trying to encourage us to go into the Capitol, even though we were enthusiastic about potentially going in order to stop the steal. There were people who were encouraging us to do so. And if we had done so, we would be arrested, but we're not. And it's not that that's not potentially factually true. It's that it's logically contradictory. Was the election actually stolen? Yes or no? If the answer is yes, then you would borderline have a moral obligation to go into the Capitol. So then why didn't you go into the Capitol? And they're like, oh, well, it seemed like there was like weird pressure to do so. So we think that it was a federal trap. And it's like, well, hold on. Like, was the election stolen and you would be correct in storming the Capitol? Or was it a federal trap? Like you kind of got to pick one, right? Because even if it was a federal trap, why wouldn't you do it and then just suffer the consequences? You're fighting for the future of the republic, right? That's kind of where this feels emotionally and logically contradictory, even if they can somehow square it in their own brains. I can't square it from the outside. Razzle Cherry says, any Alex Jones fans in chat? I don't know. Maybe they'll check out the VOD. I have no idea. Grassroots says, I'm a closeted Alex Jones fan. I mean, I think he's wrong about like nearly everything, but he's incredibly entertaining and funny. Hey, listen, that's the main thing. The main thing is be entertaining, right? You can be my ally. Oh, that's sweet. Thank you, buddy. Didn't Nick take pics with Baked Alaska in the Capitol? Well, I think if he was actually physically in there, I'm sure he took pictures with other dissident right-wing people. But if he was physically in there, I think he probably would have caught some kind of charge, right? Anyways, continuing.
Everything I bitch at them for, I'm always the worse than them. So sorry for that, but better late than never. So I see a big thing against me, and I don't bring this up because I'm being attacked. I see it a lot, and I want people to understand where I come from. Jones is...
Earshot says that it was a lookalike to Nick Fuentes. Nick Fuentes wasn't actually physically in the Capitol. I'm presuming that that's probably true because I almost guarantee you that they verified cell phone data. Cell phone data does geolocation. It's not always perfectly accurate, but it's pretty accurate. And so if they have really good cell towers that are able to triangulate cell phone data, I think that's what they used for some of their trespassing convictions. So I think that if Nick had cell phone data that showed him physically in the Capitol, he probably would have caught a charge.
Is the ultimate, hopium person. He's saying globalism is in big trouble. He says we're winning. He says the New World Order is in deep trouble. And I look at where I've come in 31 years, and I look at all these populists being elected, and I look at them having to arrest their political opposition, the globalists, and I look at going out on the street, and all I get's love now, 10 times what it even was a few years ago, and that's my gauge, and I see Trump doing a lot of good things, and I see them talking about globalism, the New World Order. I see a new international system forming. It doesn't mean AI isn't a problem. It doesn't mean there isn't a lot of stuff Trump administration is doing that I don't agree with. But I mean, overall, we've come so far that I just can't help but say, yeah, we're really turning the tide. I think we're starting to win here. And I've been doing this a long time when almost nobody knew about this thing, when most people weren't even born yet or were in diapers. And I don't say like, hey, Sonny boy, I see how far we've moved the ball now. And I'm very excited.
Yeah, well, you've earned it. I mean, you've been doing it longer than anybody. You've earned the right to say Sonny boy, because you're right. And it's been going on for a long time. And I agree with you. I think generally there's a huge cause to be optimistic. There's a huge cause to be white-pilled any way that you can cut it. I mean, I think about 10 years ago when I was growing up, it seemed like wokeism, leftism was unstoppable. When you think about those Obama years early on or in the middle, 2012, 2013, it felt like things were going in one direction forever. Always more left wing, always more progressive, always more woke.
Okay. All right, let's try to break this down. I'm gonna try to break bread with Nick, but I don't know if I'm gonna be able to logically. Okay, Ved Sunil says, "I'm sorry, but the globalists were mostly right." See, this is where I've had to come to a distinction between me and other people. I'm not a globalist. Okay, definitionally, if you're a globalist, you're somebody who wants to treat humanity as like a single governmental body, and you want to advocate for global humanity, which to some extent I do, but I'm an internationalist. I think that there are so many people on the planet. You have to have local, state, and national level governments, and they need to be representative of the people that are in those states and in those countries, or else it's not going to work. So if Poland wants to have a unique culture, unique immigration policy, unique economic policy, good for them. If Russia wants to do the same, if different Eastern European countries want to do the same, if some African countries want to do the same, that's totally fine, because that's the level at which human beings can be managed. It's impossible to govern 7 billion people. And so I'm not a globalist, I'm an internationalist. And I also, while I think the Constitution and republicanism and freedom of speech, freedom of conscience, right to self-defense, and a limited government that's limited by a constitution, while I do think those are universal human goods, it doesn't mean that those can't be refined into better human goods. And so there might be cultures or governmental systems out there that can enhance and make better our civilization and our culture. So I don't like to identify as a nationalist, because a lot of nationalists use that as like a code word for ethno-nationalism. And I don't like to use globalism, because globalism, in my opinion, kind of dog whistles that you want there to be a world culture that, Nick Fuentes calls them cappuccino debt slaves, because everybody's mixed race and they just work for money in order to survive, while the globalist elite effectively use you as a slave force. I don't prescribe to that reality either. I'm an internationalist. I want America to do well. I believe in the United States of America. I think it's a great country. I think all the good things about America. However, I want it to work within a world order in order to affect the maximal human well-being as possible. And then when it comes to this interaction or whatever that he's saying, where it's like, yeah, we've been doing this for 30 or 40 years. I respect that Alex Jones, you can find him effectively being a schizophrenic, making VHS tapes in the 1980s, confronting random powerful people and yelling at them on steps, in like the late 80s, early 90s, right? And he did that when 12 people would buy his VHS tape, right? Now he's doing it where hundreds of thousands of people either hate watch him or watch him. And that's because he grounded out for 30 or 40 years. If he shot 2 or 3 schizo videos and quit, we wouldn't know who Alex Jones was. He did this for decades. And he did this through a lot of hate. So I think he's wrong and dumb and silly and a goofball. That doesn't mean that he doesn't have like a very persistent grind set, right?
Always more government, more globalist. It seemed like it was the end of the world. It really did. And
no, it didn't. Obama was infinitely more liberal than he was progressive. Internet progressives were the people who made it seem like the left wing was going to win everything forever because they dominated social media and they wrote the terms of service. Obama himself was like a lib. He was basically the 2010 version of Bill Clinton. It wasn't over in 2010.
It seemed like that was never going to change. Like there was nothing that could even push it off of that track. It wasn't even possible. And so for us to come this far where Trump has been reelected after January 6th, after COVID, the vax mandate, after the dark winter under Joe Biden, honestly, even though I had my criticisms of Trump and I didn't vote for him for reasons we could get into, it does, I think, give me a lot of confidence and optimism that he was reelected. It says something about how the country is fundamentally changed. Even on the free speech front, a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, it was the absolute apogee of censorship. And I remember thinking at that time, it's only ever going in one direction, more censorship. It's never going in the reverse. And then between the advent of Rumble, some of these other free speech platforms, of course, Elon acquiring Twitter, I think it's beyond anybody's wildest imagination, anybody's wildest expectations, the degree of freedom of speech, freedom of expression.
And Elon deserves a lot of credit, but Rumble really being a trailblazer when they were really coming after any company that actually tried to bring in free speech. Look, they did
Bruh, I was warning about this to Democrats for so long. It would honestly, I probably thought about this in social media from 2016 to 2020. And then in 2019, when I first started doing politics, I probably argued about it up until literally Gen X says, I didn't get a notification today for some reason. I'm sorry. Change your notifications to all. That's the best we can do. Also, I didn't do a Twitter or a Discord announcement. My apologies, but we started late today just because I had a doctor's appointment in the morning. I'm sorry for not giving you guys a heads up first. But hold on. When did Elon buy Twitter? So 2022. So basically from 2019 to 2022, what I said ad nauseum, you can probably find clips of me saying this, is that the right wing's upset. They're upset that they can't talk about globalism. They can't talk about race issues without walking on eggshells. They can't talk about COVID. They can't talk about the elections. And so as a result, what's going to happen is if you guys keep these terms of service, then what's going to happen is there's going to be alternative to these social media platforms that is going to come about, and right-wing people are going to get into their silo and they're not going to talk to the left wing anymore. And that's going to come with a whole host of new problems. And effectively what I got from the Twitch and YouTube political scene was, well, they're private companies. They can do what they want. Well, I was right. Again, I've been right tons of times so far through my YouTube and political career. The reason why I think I'm not more popular is because I say the boring thing that's obvious when the hyperbolic thing is more sexy, right? Whereas I'm saying like the boring, obvious thing that's probably going to happen. And so as a result, we're reaping what we've sown, okay? Elon has bought Twitter and he has fundamentally changed the way that it works to the point that all I get is bombarded with like pro right-wing BS. I still love Twitter, but it's basically like a pro-Trump wank fest at all times. It's actually crazy. And then when it comes to other social media companies, they've liberalized, meaning that they've made more free their terms of service because Twitter set the tone. And then also, even when it comes to Twitch, they're still propping up the leftist channels, but the pressure on the leftist channels has upped substantively because the rest of social media is more free. The rest of social media is more right-wing, I guess. And so as a result, that in turn puts pressure on Twitch where it's like, you guys are still 2020 levels of progressive, whereas the rest of the internet has effectively reverted back to 2014 levels of free speech, or 2025 you could consider it its own beast, because I don't remember it being this racist back in 2014. It was pretty racist, but the racism was funny. It was like, oh, black people do this messed up thing, isn't that funny? It wasn't like we should analyze skull shapes in order to segment society and actually segregate, you know? So I feel like in some ways the racism in the tens and the thousands was better than the racism in the 20s. It's crazy. Gen X says, okay, bummed I missed every talking smack about. There'll be a VOD, obviously. But can y'all believe they called his physique a MAGA body? Have they never seen a Trump rally? Yeah, I was kind of joking. I talked to Drew Pavlou last night. I was joking with him. I was like, listen, I love you. If you shop at Walmart, that's totally fine. I shop at Walmart when I'm broke too. When we need a lot of stuff and the money is only stretching so far, I shop at Walmart as well. However, there are people who shop at Walmart who barely look human. And I will, they look like fantasy creatures, like fantasy orcs and fantasy ogres. And honestly, at this point, I think J.R.R. Tolkien drew his fantasy design elements from people he saw at Walmart. But so the point is that, MAGA is not all bros. They're not all bodybuilders. Let's put it that way. Razzle Cherry says, Sacred Snow, it's a red flag for sure. I don't really understand Alex's endgame. I don't know what the point of his content is other than to make conspiracy theorists vote for Trump. Well, I mean, that could be the point, I guess. Razzle Smasher says, that Murray Smith debate on Rogan really was a microcosm of the post-truth climate we're in. It's sad and infuriating. Yeah. I've been yelling about it for a decade, but nobody listens to me. That's the problem. If everybody listened to me, the world would work properly. Eric Dom says, those TS probably also made the left-wing stuff more extreme. I don't think some of the extremities of wokeness and the excuses for the BLM riots would not have been as accentuated. Yeah, there were some crazy tweets during the Summer of Love. There were some crazy tweets that got crazy high engagement that was effectively like, yeah, burn it all down. Hold on. Please don't burn down my neighborhood. Like, that actually happened to the NBA player. You want to take a look at that? I think that's so funny. This was one of the funniest things from 2020 riots. NBA player, BLM riot, Twitter. This was one of the funniest things. I wonder if I can riot Twitter. Man, if somebody could find me this guy, but there was an NBA player. NBA player tweets support for BLM riots, then tells everyone to go home when they come to his neighborhood. This is way too long. I know it's way too long, but I wonder if any of the keywords will catch. It was one of the funniest things ever. Oh, I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing it. If anybody has it, if you have any keywords that I can Google, it's so funny. There's this NBA player who's like, yeah, America's racist, burn it all down, blah, blah, and like that was his tweet. And then literally like 8 hours later, it's like, no, you guys are burning down the wrong neighborhood. Go home. It was so funny because it was literally within like, I don't know, like 5 hours. It was amazing. Grassroots Chetchabon says, I actually dress like an orc when I go to Walmart so I don't look too off-putting. I go there on the regular, full disclosure. Hey, listen, we all got to do what we got to do. There's a reason why Walmart's popular. It's because it's mad cheap, right? It's not because it's good. It's probably filled with rat poison. It's not because it's a good place to shop. The lighting is terrible. However, everything's mad cheap. It's literally 30% less than everywhere else. There's a reason why Walmart is popular, even though it's a terrible place to be. Void of Parrot says at Valor Media Network, I like that it makes the world more magical. Hey kids, want to see an ogre? Oh man, you guys are crazy pants, but that's fine. My forever favorite is fiery but mostly peaceful. Yeah, that was bananas. Those tweets were within 34 hours of each other. Exactly. Google's fallen off. Yeah, use Bing. Bing will show you everything. Yeah. Target is upscale Walmart, 100%. Vet Sunil. Yeah, Target has good vibes. Target is like 10 to 15% more expensive than Walmart, but the vibes are so much better. Yeah. I don't remember who it is. I'm gonna try one more Google. Okay, we're gonna try it one more time, but this time I'm gonna use Bing because Bing is so funny. It's the Microsoft search engine, and if you type in like racial slurs dictionary, if you type in the racial slur database, right? So hold on, let me go to Google and type in the same thing. Okay, racial slurs dictionary. Then what happens is you get the Wikipedia list of ethnic slurs. That's pretty good. You get Oxford, Amazon, the Library of Scotland. You effectively get like dictionaries, thesauruses, and a whole bunch of people that are like anti-racist, right? Whereas if you go to Bing, they literally the top search is the racial slur database. It's a searchable data bank of every like every, look at this, Afghans, Antarcticans, Balkan, Black Russians, Cajuns, Cambodians, Ecuadorians, Falklanders. Like, bro, it's literally it shows you the worst stuff possible. All right, but hold on. NBA player BLM tweet house gets attacked. I'm not saying that's, the right keywords, but it might be. Is this it? Bro, this is it. Bing for the win. Bing W, bro. You got to Bing it. You can't Google it anymore. You got to Bing it, bro. We found it in 10 seconds. No way. Yo, can you guys appreciate that we Googled it and there was like nothing and we Binged it and we found it in 10 seconds? Tell me that's not funny. So Chris Martin Palmer says, burn it down, burn it all down. And then Chris Martin Palmer So that was, it's not showing the date, but at 5:31 of 20, he says, they just attacked our sister community down the street. It's a gated community and they tried to climb the gates. They had to beat them back, then destroyed a Starbucks, are now in front of my building. Get these animals the F out of my neighborhood. Go back to where you live. Bro, literally encouraging the riots. And within 35 hours, according to Well QC John, crying about how the riots came to your neighborhood. What a dirtbag. That was effectively the all of 2020 was reaping and sowing. That's what it was. Oh, this is an undisclosed ad for the slur database. Dude, if the racial slur database wants to sponsor the channel, like I don't think Valor will be down, but they could sponsor Counterpoints. I'm joking. I'm mostly joking. I'm like 80% joking. All right. Anyways, let's continue with the content. We got distracted with search engine slur databases and trying to find a pro BLM tweet. My apologies to you beautiful souls at home. Let's continue the content.
Parler.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and you know, because you're a video creator as well, I was banned from all live streaming platforms. I had to build my own. After 2021, after J6, I had to go and create something from scratch with the developer team.
And the Southern Poverty Law Center literally paid off one of our former employees who was here at the time, and they're like 8 years, to infiltrate, to hack into our surveillance camera system trying to find something bad. And then when he got caught doing it, when he'd left, he said, well, you deserve it. You support Nick Fuentes because one of our programmers helped you a little with some software and how to get your thing back up because you're being censored. And I'm like, I believe in free speech. But then they had a Southern Poverty Law Center expose Jones secretly with Fuentes. I mean, we help tons of people. That's what Band.video was all about, by the way, is helping everybody. It doesn't mean I agree with everything people say, but I do believe in free speech.
Right. Well, yeah.
Because they could take yours away, they could take mine away.
Exactly. Yeah. We all have a stake in free speech. And that's why I think nobody should support censoring anybody else. Well, yeah, they said that one of your guys helped me build the site. He got me the domain registrar. He went on to work for the Epic domain registrar. It's like a cancel proof way you could register the website. And
I think he also said, because I asked him, I said, what is this? I'm doing some Fuentes. And he said, well, well, no, we also helped you with putting you with a video server group or something.
Yeah, I think they tried.
But that's what we do. I mean, right. We help. We have other people on. We do it all.
100%. Yeah. No, you guys are 100% in favor of free speech. So I'm with you. That's why and I'm with you. I don't think.
Listen. Yeah, they did. Jonah Boy, 100%. They absolutely went after Mr. Girl. Now, whether or not you think Mr. Girl, for those of you who don't know, it's a guy who does really introspective philosophical videos about abuse, child sex abuse, pedophilia, all that kind of stuff. But the GROYPERS 100% went after Mr. Girl and got him banned off of YouTube. And then also, if I went through Nick Fuentes' content, would I find him talking about bringing back blasphemy laws? I already know that I would find him talking about banning pornography. And if you want to argue that pornography isn't free speech, that's totally fine. I'm not going to fight with a Christian about whether or not pornography should be classified as free speech. That's totally fine. You don't believe that it is. That's totally fine. However, if I was to look for it and dig in, would I find Nick Fuentes talking about blasphemy laws and how we should bring back blasphemy laws so you can't, irreverently criticize or mock religion? Because I would not be surprised if, while he does want the maximum amount of free speech possible, so he can say whatever he wants in reference to race relations, in reference to IQ, in reference to mass immigration, in reference to all that kind of stuff, I will not be surprised if we find clips of him effectively saying that we need to bring back blasphemy laws against religion. No sympathy for Mr. Girl, says Voided Parrot, and Dr. Zaya says it sucks that Mr. Girl is still banned from everything. Yeah, well, I'm of two minds of this. I'm not going to lie. So just being real, I'm a little skeeved out by Mr. Girl, obviously because of all the topics that he picks, but I think that's why he picks it, is so he can be inflammatory, right? And then it's undeniable that he's a talented music artist. He makes a bunch of hip hop songs, and some of them are really catchy and really funny and have really good wordplay. We fought over the Destiny report, right? The breaking of the news stories over the past few months, because I effectively said this isn't enough for me to hook, line, and sinker, just, get away from Destiny. I've kind of always known that Steven was a little bit sociopathic, lacked a substantive amount of empathy, and that also he was degenerate sexually. And so as a result, if I knew this in 2022 when Mr. Girl said it and said it loud and proud, my opinions don't change that much when it's revealed that he's been doing all this like terrible stuff. It's like, we all knew this. We all knew this back in 2022. The question is, there's a whole bunch of or not the question, but the statement is, there's a whole bunch of liberal and progressive streamers and media personalities who now can no longer deny it. And so they have to run away screaming because Steven allegedly leaked homemade pornography and allegedly audio recorded consensual sexual encounters. And so as a result, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it. Destiny's obviously like, he needs to get his interpersonal stuff together. There's a whole host of things to criticize. You could even accuse him of being a bad guy in a lot of ways. But I kind of already knew he was a bad guy, right? I don't know. Same way I think Nick's a bad guy. I think Nick, I would talk to Nick happily. I think he's a funny, interesting, charismatic dude. I think his politics are evil. I think Nick Fuentes is funny and intelligent and charismatic. That's why he has a base. I think his politics are actually evil. They are bad and they do bad in the world. And he probably knows they do bad. Razzle Smasher says, writing that way for TOS, so you know what I mean. I just like Mr. Girl very much, but I can't deny that I'm a PDF file with song was funny. Yeah, of course. No, literally that song. And then the opposite one, where you want to Minecraft a PDF. Those are hilarious. They're objectively hilarious songs. Nang Ong says, not a fan of Mr. Girl. He's pretty good at getting under people's skin. Heard that he's been doing that since his college days. That's true. That Eminem parody was pretty funny, though. Deplatforming him is a bit far. Yes and no. I literally see it both ways. I don't necessarily want him deplatformed, but I do want him to pick a different topic to talk about. I think that would be nice.
People should always be questioning everybody's credibility. People deserve scrutiny, but I think people need to be fair. There needs to be some charity and honesty. And like you said, analyzing people by their fruits. If I'm the #1 critic of Israel or, a particular topic, and you're platforming me consistently over the course of 6 years, helping me put my website online, I think that's pretty clear-cut evidence that you're a true advocate of free speech.
Well, where I'm at on the Israel thing, or people always saying this guy works for Israel, or this guy, it's just stupid. I would be tired of hearing, the same bird outside my window go chirp, chirp, chirp forever. It's nice to hear some birds chirp, but after a while, it's just the same thing, over and over and over and over and over, and it's just retarded. And so, I'm covering geoengineering. They admit they've been doing secretly. I'm covering the poison shots. I'm covering the human trafficking. I'm trying to cover it all, and then just let people make the decision. My issue on Israel is, Israel's done a lot of really bad things, and I've exposed it, a ton. My issue is that I don't want to go after Israel, and sit there and make it about Jews, period, because I don't see it as one unified group. And I think it's more effective to criticize bad policies and get everybody against Netanyahu wanting to stay in power for 23 years, wanting a war with Iran, that most experts agree will take us closer to a nuclear war than even the Ukraine disaster. And Trump is saying, no, blocking it. I know from behind the scenes, Trump is pissed at Netanyahu and really doesn't like him. And then I get to hear, oh, he works for Netanyahu. No, he doesn't. And I just know the facts and I see the fruits. Is Trump an enemy of Israel? Absolutely not. Does Trump support Jews? Absolutely. And, in general, I support everybody. I don't hate Muslims individually. I just know they're not compatible here because their culture is to take over.
Right.
All right. Let's deal with chat for a second before we address any of that. Christian Blair says, I watched the VOD of Destiny going over the transcript. Pixie really fudged herself by listening to De Laguna. The law firm she hired messed up again and again. Bear in mind, Christian Blair, I'm not saying that's incorrect. I'm saying that wait until we actually see how the court case plays out, because obviously there's a reason why the court case is being fought in the court of public opinion, and there's a reason why Destiny didn't settle, right? Because Destiny effectively said, you already did all the optical damage that you possibly could have done. Therefore, dragging me through the court isn't that big of a deal. So you're looking for a settlement, but you already fired all your shots. I don't need to settle with you. I'll pay more to not pay you and then take the small victory and then say, Yeah, yeah, I did some messed up stuff, but she lost her case because it wasn't as messed up as she said it was. Stephen, I think effectively has said that he would rather the damage is done, so he would rather pay more to win the case than he would actually just pay her out and call it a day, right? Then Razzle says, Connor, did you read the transcripts? No. Pixie's lawyers seem really, really, really not that great. I don't think she'll win. My guess is it'll be bounced back to a lower court and she'll try to settle. We'll see. Like I just said, we'll see. I don't want to make any ironclad predictions. Lawyers are good at arguing back and forth, so you always have to have a little bit of not faith. You have to believe that there's going to be a little bit more at play with personalities in courtrooms. It's never a done deal based off of like hard just interpretation of the law. There are cases that are overwhelmingly going to go one way because the evidence lines up with the law so aggressively, but I never count chickens until they're hatched. Ironside says, as much as I hate to say it, Nick makes me miss Richard Spencer. At least Spencer was less gay. Rude. Not literally true. Maybe slightly true. Hearshot says Desi is good at making things seem like they're in his favor. Yeah, but that's also, I'm not going to lie, Hearshot, exactly what you just said is the reason why I'm not going to make a call one way or the other. Because I'll tell you what I would have done in my lay opinion. If I had done something messed up and I had hurt people, it doesn't matter if I'm rich or poor or whether or not I intended to or not. My thing is to kind of own all my BS because frankly, that's the way that I was raised and that's the way that I live my life. And it helps me sleep at night I sleep like a baby from a moral perspective because I try to tell the truth as much as physically possible. And I also try to live by the code that I was raised with as much as possible so it doesn't hurt me. And so I sleep like a baby. And so what I would do if I hurt somebody by doing something this flagrant, I would just say, I messed up. I did something stupid and selfish. I hurt somebody else. I'm going to work with them in back channels in order to try to make it right. That's it. That's all I would say. And then I would go try to make it right with that person. And then if I can make it right, I will. And then if I can't make it right, I won't. It really is that simple. And if people are going to hate me for the rest of my life because I did something bad, it is what it is, right? I have to own what I did, right? Gen X's link there is bad. There are 15 other issues that will have to be decided. It's not good for her. Well, we'll see. We'll see. Again, there's the timetable argument that real quick refresher for people who don't know what we're talking about. The streamer Destiny allegedly leaked homemade pornography that he shot with other women without their consent to other parties who wanted to see that content. That is in violation of a federal statute. And so he's being sued by one of the girls whose homemade pornography was distributed and then ultimately ended up getting leaked. That's the main thing. The other thing was that he was accused of having consensual sexual liaisons with a few people and then audio recording those consensual liaisons without the knowledge of the other party. Both of those are pretty scummy. Both of those are pretty gross. However, it kind of falls short of like criminal. And so he's dealing with like the legal and social fallout as a result of that. And that's kind of what we're talking about in chat right now. So anyways, I think that's really all I have to say on it. My tactic would be to say, hey, sorry, I screwed up. Let's make it right. But that's also why Destiny has 12,000 live viewers. And, I have you beautiful souls, which I parasocially love you for. But let's just say it's not 10,000. Anyways, Sean Kaplan said Destiny could argue a point he 100% doesn't believe in the most convincing way possible. Yes. So I don't think Destiny is a sophist. I do not think he's a sophist. Sophists are people who can use rhetoric to argue things they don't believe in, and their rhetorical skill allows them to effectively convince their audience that they believe whatever they're saying, but they will change on a dime and they will be just as rhetorically skilled arguing the opposite point. That is one of the things that happened in ancient Greece that Socrates and Plato criticized, right? So I don't think that Destiny is a sophist. However, I do think that he's been so exposed to rhetoric and sophistry that he will engage in rhetoric in order to try to create a emotional response in his audience rather than actually just speaking the truth from what he earnestly believes. I think he bounces back and forth between which rhetorical style he does based off of what he thinks is effective. Anyways, sorry for the Destiny rant. It happens.
Right. I disagree a little bit. The thing about the Jewish and Israel topic, the reason that people are preoccupied with it, the reason why I'm preoccupied with it is because we do believe that the system fundamentally has a Jewish character or a pro-Israel character. And so I was thinking about that actually, because I hear that a lot. People say, oh, all you talk about is Jews, Israel, this, that. And I think that would sort of be like saying if somebody lived under communism, if someone lived in the Soviet Union, all they talk about is how the communists are bad. All they talk about is how the Bolsheviks are bad. Can't they talk about bread prices? Can't they talk about something else? And I'm thinking, well, if that's the character of the
Dr. Zayas isn't wrong.
Regime, if the regime is fundamentally of a particular character and we're living under it and we want to change it, then we do have to talk about that. I talk about politics. Politics happens to be colored by a Jewish mafia. And you're right, it isn't monolithic. It is a bit more nuanced. And I agree, some people take it too far or it's reductive or overly simplistic. We do have to acknowledge, though, that there are two sides of it. They do have a handshake between each other, which you'll see crop up from time to time, like after October 7th, ADL and Ben Shapiro are hanging out, left and right come together.
I've been seeing major conservative sites, they're so-called conservative. I think it was Red State, or was it, I think I saw them on both, or what was it? Was it Red State or was it Town Hall? And they were like, literally, the head of the ADL is so good. He's so wonderful. We need to support him. What? That guy got up at their big award ceremony 4 years ago with Sacha Baron Cohen and called for my arrest and called for Zuckerberg's arrest for not handing it completely over to them. I mean, that is a sinister group that has been, caught running intelligence operations in police departments on citizens on record. I mean, they are bad news.
Oh, yeah. I don't think anyone would disagree for the most part, except for, there are certain elements. I remember a year ago, a friend of mine, Keith Woods, got this hashtag going on Twitter, ban the ADL, ban the ADL. They're the ones doing the censorship. They're the ones doing the banning. Why don't we ban them? Why do they have the right to call for other people to be censored, especially, like you said, when they're involved in foreign intelligence in San Francisco and other places? And I saw very quickly the message changed from the ADL is bad, the ADL is pro-censorship. In about 1 week, it turned into, well, the ADL is good. It has a good mission. The problem is the leadership is too left-wing. They said Jonathan Greenblatt is too left-wing. He's too pro-Democrat. They said the problem is he's not isolating the so-called real anti-Semites and justifiably banning them. The problem is pro-Israel conservatives are being caught up in this dragnet, pro-Israel right-wing guys on Fox News or in alternative media. And I said, but I don't really agree with that narrative. I don't think that, even a so-called real, what is a real anti-Semite, but even a so-called real one, I think they have free speech too. I think they should have rights on Twitter as well, and let them be, if they're wrong or if they are hateful, then let the public square disagree with them. But I saw that a lot of conservatives said, no, the ADL's good, noble mission. We need to marginalize.
Hold on, I'm not cutting you off. It's a hard satellite break. Nick J. Fuentes is here. I want to come back and go into this.
So let's talk about that while we have an opportunity to do so. So this is my thing that obviously challenges what Drew. Oh, yeah, I do. Did y'all think Nick is genuine? Like he really believes this stuff? Or do you think it's a grift? No, I think he believes it. I think he's stuck in a gilded cage where he has cultivated such a schizophrenic incel neat audience that was like, it was cute to be a schizophrenic incel neat 5 years ago, but all these people they're either he's got a new batch of teenagers or he's got 25-year-old and 30-year-old neat schizophrenic audience. And dude, being a neat schizophrenic is kind of cute when you're like early 20s. It's not cute when you're almost 30, right? Like you need to get your shit together. You need to work a normal job. You need to socialize. You need to be able to take care of yourself. You need to be able to, hold stuff down. You need to be able to defend yourself physically, like all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I think he's a believer enough, I guess. So, Sacred Snow says, got to drive home from work. If I'm not back by the end of stream, have a good day. Thank you, Sacred Snow. Can you drop your Discord link in chat or something? Yeah, absolutely. Give me 1 second. Let me pull it up. But in reference to the SPLC, okay, so I think that the Southern Poverty Law Center, right, they need to clarify their mission in line with the United States Constitution. There is in my opinion, an attempt to like deplatform everyone. And I don't think that's the way to do it. I think that the racist rot in our country has gotten worse because we tried to sweep it under the rug, because we deplatformed it, because we pushed it away, et cetera, et cetera. I think that these guys have gotten more powerful because they're like, they wouldn't need to censor us if we weren't right about it. Whereas if they were on Twitter, whereas if they were in the social media square, so to speak, the public square, then yeah, sure, they might have tens of thousands of followers. They might even have hundreds of thousands of followers nationwide. Shoot, they might even break 1 million. But the racism 100 years ago compared to the racism now is almost nothing. It's very benign compared to the racism of the 20s, of the 40s, of the 60s, of last century. And so it's much improved. And then if these guys ever get caught committing the heinous crimes that come as a result of their rhetoric, like if they are involved in a lynching, like a murder, if they're involved in reference to a racial beating, if they're involved in reference to, I don't know, like the planning of a terrorist attack, they'll go to prison for decades and they'll effectively discredit their movement. So I think pushing them to the side gives them too much credence as dissidents who are dangerous to the general structure of the United States of America. I don't think they are. The reason why I think jihadist terrorism is different is because jihadist terrorism hasn't killed like a dozen people a year. It killed 3,000 people 1 year. It kills dozens of people every few years in the United States. And then internationally, it kills hundreds of thousands of people or tens of thousands of people at minimum per year. So I do view jihadism as like more potent than white nationalism or even Christian nationalism. In reference to ban the ADL, the dissident right wing, Keith Woods is dissident right for sure. He's one of the most articulate. He can articulate fascism like I've heard nobody else articulate it. I actually think he's brilliant. I just think his politics suck. And then they turned into the argument of real anti-Semites versus Zionist conservatives who just, question Jewish power every now and then. And so Nick views that as a muting of his message. That's totally fine if he views it as a muting as his message, but that doesn't mean that they're not going to feel that way, because the ADL and the SPLC, they don't just try to deplatform people, which I view as cringe. They also just document who people are and what they do. And I think that's incredibly important, because you need to be able to Google some of these people and just see all of their nefarious stuff. Because if you look at how they present themselves publicly, it's very sanitized. Grassroots Hegemon for $10. Thank you for the dono, King. Much appreciated. Maybe instead of sending Lauren Eastern to jail, we just send her and her husband to be in a long-term polycule with Destiny. I didn't see the text for this, but this is pretty awesome. So for those of you who don't know, Lauren Eastern, this is a little racist, but her name is Lauren Chen. She's from Taiwan. I think she's a Canadian citizen. She was caught up getting Dave Rubin, Benny Johnson, Tim Pool, and Lauren Southern onto a media company called Tenet Media. Well, Tenet Media ended up being a front for the Russian government, where a substantive amount of their revenue that came in, they hid through offshore shell companies. And then they used the aforementioned creators in order to spread American isolationism and also to spread pro-Russian and anti-Ukrainian propaganda. And so as a result, they basically got caught red-handed, with their hand in the cookie jar. So I would actually, if I was the Canadian government, I would offer that. You can go to jail for 5 years for knowingly participating in a Russian psychological operation against XYZ ABC law, or you can date Destiny with your husband for 5 years. Destiny would have a good time. Maybe Lauren Chen would have a good time. Maybe her husband would have a good time. I don't know, but I'll tell you, if I was offered that, I might choose jail or prison. Not that I don't like Steven, not that I don't like his current girlfriend. I think his current girlfriend is cool as hell. But I'm just saying, I'm not into that poly stuff. My good friend Lauren Southern. Yeah. So Lauren Southern is Queen Bee. I don't know if she's being sarcastic or not. Very sus. Yes. Lauren Southern, cruel and unusual punishment. I'm glad I was never close with friends with idiots for Russia. Well, yeah. So Lauren's an interesting character. She's another true believer. I think she has genuinely, because obviously she started out in conservative media. She worked for Rebel Media. She made a splash on YouTube. She started doing her own documentary series, etc. She's at least an ethno-nationalist apologist, right? For sure. Like, I think that even she would say that she's an apologist for generation identity and a critic of mass migration. And she likes to entertain dissident right-wing ideas, blah, 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 blah. But she is like an intelligent person, and she can go back and forth on really complex ideas. And she's insightful. And I don't think she's like bigoted. What I mean by that is her sister is like a DJ E-thought E-girl, and they love each other. They're good friends. Her husband, or her ex-husband, I guess, is not, let's just say he's not Aryan. You know, he's not a West African gentleman, but he's not like of Aryan purity. So Lauren Southern isn't this like stereotype of like a neo-Nazi. She's actually like just I think she's just like an intelligent, dissident right-wing people who likes to be contrarian and consider freakish ideas because she knows that it gets her infamy. And for a time, it got her money. So I don't think she's evil. And I don't think she intends to be evil. Anyways, she probably does evil, but she doesn't intend to be evil. She's dabbled. Yeah, if you mean dabbled in either dating people outside her race, or if you mean dabbling in ethno-nationalism, yeah, I think she's dabbled for sure. She does not have the excuse of ignorance. Well, I mean, I agree. She's too intelligent to have the excuse of ignorance. It's interesting. I don't think she's an ethno-nationalist, is she? It seems she's basically just being critical of Islamic migration. Conservative liberalism, I'm with you, but I think she did play pretty aggressively with generation identity when it came to the European stuff, and she has been an apologist for them. And ultimately, Generation Identity is an ethno-nationalist organization that believes in repatriation. So what they think is that with the tens of millions of people who came into Europe from the Middle East, North Africa, and Asia, that those people can stay while their countries are war zones. But the second that their countries have any level of stability whatsoever, you mass deport all of the people from the Middle East, North Africa, and Asia who came into Europe during the tens. So they're effectively for mass deportation. And if you ask them what it's about, they will tell you that like Islam and Muslims are incompatible with Western society. I know of one freakish idea that made her infamous. Yeah, it was the Great Replacement. That was one that definitely went viral. She isn't bigoted, and then you watch her interview with Michael Malice where she does the Indian meme. Well, listen, she can be racist. Void a parrot. What distinction I'm trying to make is that I guarantee you, if Lauren, because we shot a documentary together, if we went into a gas station and there was an Indian clerk, there is a 0% chance that she will be like, "Oh, you racial slur, blah, blah, blah. Why don't you go back to your country, blah, 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 blah." As a matter of fact, she would probably be like super polite and very courteous and very kind, and even talk to that person about complex ideas if they were engaged. And so as a result, I've never seen like overt, immutable characteristic bigotry for individuals coming from Lauren Southern. However, that being said, I would think that she would say that like Canada has taken in more Indians than has taken in any other ethnic group. They've done XYZ, ABC statistically more in Canadian society. Therefore, I don't like that. Therefore, I don't want to accept any more immigration from India. And as a matter of fact, I think substantive amounts of these people need to go back. And she probably would make ethno-nationalist or ethno-nationalist adjacent argumentation in order to support that idea. So that's what I'm trying to say. She might be philosophically racist or ethno-nationalist apologist. She's not individually bigoted. MMA guru GROYPERS says, disagree every time Nick is in the public square. He dominates. Look at the Destiny Nick debate 2023, embarrassed Destiny, which went viral. Did it? Maybe 2023 is a while ago. I would have to take a look at it in order to see if I agree with your assessment. No offense, but I'm going to be a little bit rude. I'll try not to be too rude. GROYPERS can be as sycophantic to Nick as DGGers are sycophantic to Steven. So I don't always trust your guys' assessments of how well Nick does in the public square. Andrew Parris says there's been so many times over the last year or so where I wish she could have shown up on Destiny's stream. True. Stop ignoring my chats. I'm not. I think I just read one. Did I just read one a second ago? I think I just read one. I just read one, bro. Relax. If you want me to read your chat 100%, do a super chat. I will 100% read your super chat. They honestly had good chemistry. I agree. You sound like a woman when you talk. Well, I could, I don't know if you're like a groyper. I'm just going to presume you're a groyper, right? So I'm 6'4", 250 pounds. I'll leave it there. Yeah. Anyways, moving on.
It's a little bit deeper. It's like, how long do we get into Israel? But I don't even, it's not like I don't want to get into it. It's just like, yeah, oh my God. But it's important because I got a bunch of angles I want to go into on this and try to explain my philosophy to you. We'll be right back.
All right. This is a review for the Ultra Methylene Blue from the Alex Jones store. Usually don't do reviews like this, but just wanted to compare it to this Earth Harmony Ultimate Methylene Blue.
Yeah, no offense, Groypers, but there is not a universe that exists where sober people look at me and look at Nick Fuentes and think that Nick Fuentes is more masculine. Sorry to disappoint. It's not a thing. He's selling. It's not meth. It's methylene. I always think I can fix her, but yeah, she was 100% down with white Sharia. She was. I don't know if she knew about the rubles, but people forget she was buddies with Dugan's blow-up daughter who got murdered. True. Oh, 51 viewers. MMA. Say something real, or I'm gonna ban you. Same thing with EJ Caron. This is my world. This isn't cozy. So, oh no, you started streaming a month ago full time, and you only have 2 or 3 classes worth of people watching you stream and break stuff down. That's not an insult. So, try again. Try saying something real, or you're gone. It's that easy. This is my domain. This isn't cozy. I don't know. Oh, is this a part of the stream? Oh, I could fast forward it. My bad.
The West Bank and the.
Okay. No, I didn't. We had a conversation versus liberal and Christian empire and MMA. That's your last warning. You say something else stupid, you're gone. It's really that simple. Yep.
The Houthis and all of it. But suddenly they stand up for 7.5 hours and retired military have to get in their cars and drive 45 minutes and go fight. And then what did Hamas, founded by Israel on record, think was going to happen when they did that? I'm not saying Israel runs them, but there's this sick relationship. Israel on record did not want a stable government with condos and apartments and casinos, which what the Muslims had before the West went in and backed radical Islamicists. Now Israel backed radical Islamicists along with NATO and our country and Turkey to overthrow Syria.
EJ Caron. Sorry, we got some groypers in chat. So for VOD viewers who are confused, we actually have a few groypers in chat, and some of them are doing the normal spam message thing. So, are you liberal or conservative? I would say I'm a neoconservative. That's probably the most accurate description. I would be a Bush era Republican. That's where I'm at.
Syria.
Yeah, on record is the funniest thing ever. Yeah, so this is one of the things that's really frustrating is, so there's this, okay. El Caron, you got one more too. So say something productive or you're gone. That's it. Listen, I got other things to do. I got other people to talk to besides you. So basically you can be chill. You can say things that are interesting and insightful, or I can ban you. It's easy. So there's this great clip from Lord of War, which is a movie, obviously, so it's not real life necessarily. Have you ever considered, I wanted both sides to lose, Lord of War? EJ Cajon says, I thought Trump defeated the neocons. How are you a neocon in 2025? Because I'm not a fucking idiot. Sorry, Mom. Sorry, Jesus. Sorry, Ken. Because I don't put all of my philosophical analysis, political analysis, I don't put it through whether or not Trump is good or bad. Right? Easy. All right. Anyways, let's watch this clip. It is relevant. And so what Alex Jones, the gentleman from an intelligence family, is saying is that the United States propped up a bunch of jihadist organizations in order to destabilize the Middle East and North Africa. What Nick was nodding to was the fact that Israel allowed Hamas to seize power in the Gazan Strip. And so as a result, Israel effectively emboldened the most militant organization against the moderates who might have done it, who might have done less damage, I guess. But this is a quote that I want you guys to keep in mind in reference to geopolitics. And it's an excellent scene from a movie that was probably released 20 years ago.
Mr. Weiss? It's okay, they're talking.
May I help?
Yeah, I have a business proposal, and I thought perhaps we could discuss it.
You think I just sell guns, don't you? I don't. I take sides.
But in the Iran-Iraq war, you sold guns to both sides.
Did you ever consider that I wanted both sides to lose? You're in the wrong place, my young friend. No place for amateurs.
So that scene, very brief, very abbreviated. You don't have the context around it. But effectively, Nick Cage is like a young Russian-American immigrant who wants to sell weapons overseas. He's actually partially based off of the Merchant of Death, who is like a real person. And so what this guy, who's supposed to be big in the arms manufacturing dealership, I don't know if he's based off of a real person, but the whole point is that just because you arm jihadists in order to fight the Syrian government doesn't mean that you actively support jihadism. It means that you want the Syrian government to lose, right? And so, well, hey, that's a great question, EJ Caron. You're asking the right questions. So let's answer this question, even if you disagree with the principles. Listen, I have no problems, Groypers in chat. I have no problems with Groypers coming over and chatting and talking smack and being Christian nationalist and all that kind of stuff. But, if you're just chatting shit, then I'm not going to get anything out of you. And so as a result, I'm not going to want to interact with you. So if you want to ask real questions, you can ask real questions. So I'm going to show you something really quick. I'm not saying that you're going to stick around for it, but you asked an excellent question. So I'm going to try to give you an excellent answer. Maps. Let me zoom out. So not quite as doxy. You can know that I live in Central Florida, but besides that, I don't want you to know my exact street address. Let's go over here. It's a geopolitics segment. I'll try to be very brief, but I do want to explain this. Why is being a neoconservative better than being America first? It's because what has happened in history is that we are European settlers, right? So all of our ancestors, or majority of our ancestors, came from this region of the world and they settled this area. Same thing with Spain and Portugal. They settled this area of the world, okay? And so what's happened is this has become an economic and military trade zone that has done very well for itself, both security and economically. And what's happened is this has done really well, particularly after World War II. It's done really economically well. And so we're in this massive economic alliance that represents a substantive amount of the developed world and massive economy. What we've also done is we've done unilateral and multilateral trade alliances with a whole bunch of countries in this area in order to offset China. And we've also done that in the Middle East and North Africa, where a substantive amount of the oil is in the world. This is a complex political and economic and military machine that gives you all of the wealth that you currently enjoy. So the reason why I'm able to talk to 50 people on the internet on a computer that has electronics manufactured in Taiwan, which is off of China. There's electronics manufactured here. There's electronics manufactured here. There's oil pumped from right here. It's synthesized in Israel, or it's synthesized in Germany, and then it's produced and then it's shipped here. And then I get to use it to talk to people. This is an incredibly complex economic machine. And so what ends up happening is that in order for all of us to do well, we have this complex economic and military apparatus, but there's people who want to disrupt it. The main people who want to disrupt it is this country right here, Iran, this country right here, China, who are still communist, and this country right here, which is Russia, which is an oligarchical, kleptocratic, authoritarian shithole. And so all of these places, in my opinion, are authoritarian, kleptocratic, authoritarian shitholes. And so what I want to do is I want to work with international partners in order to make them Republican, in order to make them mixed economy capitalists, and in order to make sure that more and more human beings have access to the cultural and material goods that I have access to. And so I want to reinforce that system. I could go for like another 10 minutes, but I think that's enough, like, you know, showing you what the world is, who works with who resists it, and why I think it's good. So El Caron, if you have a follow-up question, you might have gotten bored and fallen asleep because I didn't just say the Jews were bad. But, you know, if you have a follow-up question, I'll be happy to answer it. Biden released the Merchant of Death. Yep. Currently, MAGA lives and dies with Trump. Many MAGA-tards don't seem to understand the imminent doom of their movement if nobody else steps up. Having it all on the shoulders of an octogenarian, and I'm going to add that he's senile. Yeah. You ever do viewer debates, or is that too dangerous? No, I'll do that on my home channel. I won't do that on Valor, but I'll do that on Counterpoints. So Tuesdays, you can DM me on Twitter. You can DM me on Discord. I'll happily have a conversation and or a debate. I agree on the cultural points. Well, boom, there you go. Okay, I see your point of view. Yeah. It's not that complicated. But neocons or warhawks, how does that comport with your description? Yeah, bread and circuses. Thank you again for another excellent question. So what I would say, let me pull up Google Maps again. What I would say is that neocons got way too ballsy. Okay. So what ended up happening was we destroyed the Soviet Union in the 1990s, right? I'm gonna zoom out and I'm gonna show you this. Sorry for geopolitical maps, but you guys, I love these questions. This is like what I live and breathe for, okay? So the collapse of the Soviet Union, Russia used to own through half of Germany, okay? They used to own all of this, and this was the Soviet Union, okay? And it was an authoritarian communist organization. Same thing with China. They're not as imperialist as the Russians are, but they still want all of this area to be tributary states, okay? Now, what happened was the Europe, and this is the world I grew up in, by the way. Europe and the United States were really proud that they economically and militarily and culturally outcompeted the Soviet Union until the point that it collapsed. And then all of these former Russian states wanted to, Soviet states, I guess is the better way to say it. All of these places wanted to be better allies with the United States and wanted to be better allies with Europe, which the neocons viewed as like ultimate cultural victory. But what they didn't realize is that they had started a project in the 1980s where this country was originally supported by the United States, Iran. I think it's the second or third most proven oil reserves on the planet. So we appointed a dictator here. Well, what happened is the dictator got deposed by jihadist theocrats. And so these guys became our enemy in, I want to say, 79. So what ended up happening was this guy, Saddam Hussein, who's an asshole, he invaded Iran in order to try to take their Western oil fields, and he used a flimsy pretext to do so. And Iran started invading Iraq back, and Iraq started losing. So what we did is we sold weapons of mass destruction to Iraq. And as a result, we also fed them intelligence in order to beat back the Iranians. And the reason why we did that is because Iraq was so weak, we didn't want them to break through and then threaten Israel and threaten Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is like number one or number two proven oil reserves in the planet. So it effectively would have destabilized the entire world economy if that had happened. And so Iraq, though, they found out that we were also selling weapons to Iran through the Iran-Contra affair. That was where Reagan used shell companies in order to sell weapons to Iran and also to the Sandinistas, who were anti-communist guerrillas in South America. And so as a result, Iraq started hating us. And so they used nerve gas that we sold them in order to bomb their own people and bomb Israel. And I think they might have attacked Saudi Arabia as well. And so as a result of that, we said, fudge you, Iraq. You're no longer a part of our game, right? And so we put sanctions on them for a decade. Well, the neocons got way too confident, and they thought that we could invade this place and then turn it into a beacon of democracy in the early thousands. That was woefully naive and stupid to think that you could transform Afghanistan and Iraq into beacons of democracy. But we did our best, right? So what that has taught me, the failures in Iraq and Afghanistan, is it's not sufficient to just give people democracy or to give people mixed economy capitalism. They have to want it. And so as a result, I wouldn't back Afghanistan or Iraq or military adventurism in the Middle East and North Africa. However, I would back military support in Ukraine, where they have been fighting for 3 years. Okay. So they've done an upstanding job compared to Iraq or Afghanistan. EJ Carone says, to me, protecting the culture of America is more important than wealth and cheap electronics. Okay, good luck. As soon as food and electronics get more expensive, I think you might be changing your tune, but I don't know. Maybe you mean what you're saying. America and Europe have great wealth for now, but globalist policies have killed the golden goose. Russia and China will outcompete us. I don't agree at all. Russia will always be a fraction of European and American power. China could beat us, but they are also 1.2 billion people. So they effectively have the population of the entire Americas and Europe. And they're still fighting to keep up. So it'll take them another half century in order to be a competitor with us, when realistically they should have been ahead of us. They're also facing you think demographics is bad in the United States? It's even worse in China. The one-child policy in China effectively completely annihilated their culture from like a pro-natalist standpoint. Chinese birth rate. They have a worse birth rate than us. They have a 0.5 less birth rate than us. So, no, I disagree. Grassroots Hegemon, $50, very kind donation. Thank you kindly. Anyone saying that they are more interested in culture right now doesn't pay their own bills. You do not want a world where a refrigerator is $26,000. You want all of everything at once. You don't get to have that ever. Everything is an argument. I mean, I agree. I literally do think it's easy to argue that you don't care about cheap stuff when you're not the one paying for the stuff. No, I want a fridge to be more than that. Actually, poor people don't need fridges. Salt works fine. You're crazy. I want a white country, not a country filled with foreigners, no matter how cheap you make the TVs and the refrigerators. Okay. What's that project? There was white only HOA homeowners association project. A forgotten history, white homeowners racialized, racial converts, race equity, white only suburbs, the history you didn't learn. There's something, you could probably find it on Twitter, but there's a new housing project, I think in Missouri, that is a white only HOA, and they need help. So I'm suspicious of your last name, Caron, while being like racist against browns and blacks. But if you want to move to Missouri, where's Missouri? Right here. Okay. I'm going to try not to zoom in on my own address. But here's Missouri. There's someone in here. You'd probably have to Google it. But there's someone in this state who is making a whites only city. So you could move there if you want. And you could hang out with your fellow whites. And you could have a great time shooting guns, building houses, peeling oranges. Whatever white people do when only white people hang out together, you could do that in Missouri. Go have fun with my blessing. Enjoy it. Okay. White people built the country. The other people showed up when it was already nice and prosperous. That's not even true. So I'm Irish. Okay. So what happened was the country was founded in the 1600s, and the Anglos only occupied the 13 original colonies. I'm in Central Florida. Don't worry about it. So they only had the 13 original colonies. And then what they ended up doing is they brought all over the European trash, including my ancestors from Ireland. And they said, hey, go have fun, colonize. And so the Ulster Scots settled in the south. The Irish showed up and settled in the northeast, but also they fought all the wars. So they spread out and settled all over the country. We didn't even get this area of the country until like the late 19th century. And then also, what was it? It was like Chinese rail workers in the 19th century helped build the transcontinental railway. So they helped build the railway. The slaves did not all of it, but they did a substantial amount of agriculture in the 13 colonies, specifically when it came to tobacco and cotton. So they're the reason why the colonies were wealthy. The Native Americans were here before you. And so I think they have more of a historical claim to live here than you do. And then the Irish weren't really viewed as white until forever. Then I live in Florida. This was a Spanish colony up until, I don't know, the 1800s. And then also Mexico was a Spanish colony as well. So this is another European colony. And you're like, get those other European colonists away from me. And it's like, bro, number one, would you know EJ or El Caron or whatever your name is? Do you know what country do you hail from ethnically? Do you know? Can you tell us, EJ? No, I'm not cherry picking any exceptions. There are way more non-Anglos in the United States than there are Anglos. What's your European ethnicity? Please tell me, just so I can make a geographic point to you. Grassroots for $5. Thank you for the donation. We're actually going to argue with GROYPERS and then wrap up. I'm having a good time. Grassroots Hegemon says, at that point, I'm very fine saying good, get out, live amongst your beautiful white Swedish counterparts. Sure. You can move to Europe. There's some 99% European majority countries. White people steal cultural stuff all the time. Cowboy is literally Hispanic. Yeah, the Caballeros. EJ Caron says, people want white countries until they realize the amount of poverty this will cause. No, I mean, like, Poland's doing fine. Poland is xenophobic. But I want to know, EJ, I want to know what your ethnicity is. I'd rather be poor, surrounded by people who hate me and plot against me. Yeah, you're paranoid. Go outside, shake your neighbor's hand, talk to people. Talk to your neighbors. Literally, like, walk outside, go, like, say what's up to your, like, black neighbor at the gas station and say, hey, what's up? And see how nice of a conversation you have. Old School says, next time you meet a white nationalist who prizes cowboy culture, remind him it's a culture initiated by Spanish in Florida. Yup. Hold on. Where did he say? Did he say? Red and Circus says, we settled, not colonized. There was nothing civilizational to colonize. I mean, it's arguable. I don't care. Use whatever words you want. Nothing you just said changes what I said. EJ Caron says American. No. You said white. Native Americans and Mexicans did not build America. Yeah, you're right. They built Mexico. You're right. And now they serve in our agricultural sector. And now they fight in our military. So, EJ Caron, my ancestors are American. Some are Irish. So I want to show this to you. Okay, that's great. Mine are Irish as well. So I am ethnically Irish. I was invaded and killed by the English. No bad blood. It is what it is. But I want to show you the Iberian Peninsula is what was Spain. Okay. So in reference to Spain, what am I, Gaelic? Is it Gaelic? No, there's another word for it. Gaelic map of the Gauls. Come on, somebody, the Celts. There we go. Map of Celt settlement Europe. So I want to show this to you because there's Iberian Celts. Okay. So the Celts are the tribe from Ireland, right? But the Celts settled everywhere in Europe. And so you're saying that because you come from this island, you don't want to hang out with people who hang out here. But if you track it back 2,000 or 3,000 years, then you're the same, bro. You're the same. So you can say like, oh, he's my cousin. Oh, he mixed with a bunch of Moors. Oh, he mixed with a bunch of North Africans and Mediterraneans. but you probably still have Celt blood along with Mexicans. So like you're kind of like, you're arguing to not live next to your cousin, which is kind of crazy in a historical sense. But hold on, let's check in real quick. Economics or foreign policy? Well, we're just talking about Geopolitical right now. The Irish were historically considered the blacks of white people. I mean, I'm not surprised. You know, I got plenty of alcoholic extended family. America was white for a long time before mass migration. It was white for 100 years. So hold on. When was the first English settlement of America? America, hold on. When was the first English settlement in America? 1607. When was the first Spanish settlement in America? 1493. So the Spanish were already here 100 years before we were. Okay. When was the first Irish mass immigration to America? 1715 to 1845. So 1715, 1607. So 100 years. When did the 13 colonies start spreading west? 1775 to 1783. Oh, and sorry, did they say that the original settlement was 1715? Where was the first mass immigration was 1845 during the Irish famine. Okay. And then 1775 to 1783, our country wasn't even founded until 1776. So you had 200 years of English people. And need I remind you that the English people and Ulster Scots, by the way, because those are Scottish, not English, they only settled the 13 colonies. So they only made it from Georgia to Maine before we started expanding into all of this stuff. So no, you're wrong. You were English for 200 years, and you were English in 13 colonies and 13 colonies only before everybody else came in order to settle the rest of the country. So you're just wrong. Yes, there was some black, some Chinese, some Mexican, but 90% whites until the 70s. Well, I mean, I agree with you that it was 85% white. I agree with that. But what was the breakup? The numbers have come since 1965 are way higher than the entire Ellis Island period. Don't try and be cute. Yeah, the Ellis Island period, you need to look at it as a function of percentages. I'm going to be cute. So rest your case. You haven't even made one yet. So the numbers that came through 1965 are way higher than the entire Ellis Island period. Yeah, as a function of percentage. How many immigrants came through Ellis Island? Total. 12 million immigrants. So 1892. So what was the population? What was the population of the United States in 1892? Around 66 million. So 11 million. 11 into 66 is 15%. Okay, so we had a 15% addition. How many immigrants have come into the U.S. Since 1965? About 70 million. And then what was the U.S. population in 1965? 200 million. So 70 divided by 200 is 0.35. So you effectively have a 15% increase in immigration through Ellis Island, which I don't know why you would pick that as an arbitrary place that all immigrants must come through. Kind of weird that you picked that. And then on top of that, we've had 35% immigration increase since then. And I almost guarantee you a majority of it has been Hispanic. So what are the racial demographics of the United States right now? So if you add white Hispanic, and white, so Northern European and Southern European whites, we're still at 75%. Now, that probably includes, 25% Hispanic white. How much of the United States is Hispanic? It's probably like 25%. 20%. Bro, so again, you're freaking out over what exactly? That you came from here and somebody who speaks English came from here? Like, what's the problem again? What's your problem? What's your deal? Don't try and be cute. I am cute, okay? You might not see it, but under this beard, I have a baby face. And then not just that, some people, I'm not as handsome as Hassan Piker. I'm not as handsome as Henry Cavill, but I am a cute man. It is true. Rascal Cherry says, pro-immigration bros be like, the Irish are basically back, so why can't we bring in Haitians? No, I don't say that. And I'm also not pro-immigration. I'm just not shitting my pants. Jefferson presided over the Louisiana Purchase. We started moving west right away. France was raising money because Napoleon wanted to do Napoleonic things. Yeah. Latinos will eventually become white. Lots of them already are, dude. I went to a law enforcement academy in Central Florida. There are shitloads of Hispanics here. Do you know how many cops spoke Spanish in my 30-person class that was like 2/3 Hispanic last name? 2. There were 2 people who spoke Spanish because everybody else was like 2nd or 3rd generation immigrant. So they all spoke English. Thanks for the combo. You are cute. Well, thank you, EJ Caron. I wasn't trying to be too rude. I disagree with you, and I disagree with your dad, your internet dad. So that's okay. No big deals. EJ Caron, I'm being serious. I appreciate you for the super chat. Number 1, thank you. Number 2, I appreciate you moving the conversation away from you're a piece of shit, you're criticizing my internet dad, fuck you, you don't have many of that viewers, blah, 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 blah. I appreciate you moving away from that into actually engage what we're talking about. I do appreciate it. I had 100% burp corner for sure. Vince O'Neill says, my best friend's Peruvian, but he considers himself white Hispanic, even though he's half native. Yeah, isn't that funny? The mostly native Hispanics want to claim that they're all like, Castizo Spaniard conquistadors, and then all the conquistadors majority Spanish, Spanish people from New Spain and South America. They all want to claim that they're Native American because they view each other as having like better oppression points in the hierarchy. It's pretty funny. Christian Miller says, let's just be clear. You white nationalists are less productive. Well, they're Christian nationalists. Let's be polite. Less productive than any immigrants that come from the U.S. Your culture is being racist, living off of welfare while mocking blacks. No, I think that's too white and black. You ask good questions. Well, yeah. Thank you, EJ Caron, for asking good questions and staying in order to follow up with it, even if we don't agree. I do appreciate it. Christian Blair says, in supporting billionaire arslers that don't really care about you. I mean, listen, Christian Blair, so I wouldn't say it the way that you said it, but I don't disagree with you. So anyways, we have hit 2:45. My goal is to shoot from 9:30 to 2:30. Obviously, I was late today, so my apologies for being late. However, I did need to handle business. I do need to handle more business. Like I need to go handle back end stuff. I need to have meetings. I need to talk to people, et cetera, et cetera. But seriously, thank you for the donation. I didn't even shill that much. And Grassroots Hegemon, Dashing Rogue, Sean Kaplan, Rises, even though he insulted my mom, all is forgiven because of that dono. Grassroots Hegemon again, EJ Caron, our resident Groyper. Seriously, thank you for the donations. It really does mean the world. It means the world to me that I get to hang out with, dozens of beautiful souls during the workday, talk shop about news and current events and politics and alternative media characters. It also means the world that we get donations and people are willing to pay for the content. Honestly, it makes me so happy. And then the fact that this is new, right? We've only been doing this realistically a month. So the fact that we're brand spanking new and we're having fun and doing whatever, it's great. I was also going to share too, I am going back on Tim Pool this week. So I will be debating the welfare state. Last time I was arguing that the welfare state didn't create the modern woman and it didn't ruin the United States of America. This week, I'm going to be arguing that we need to put limits on the welfare state or else it will end up bankrupting or destroying America. I'll be arguing against Econo Boy, the social democrat. So lucky for me, Econoboy couldn't find a good right-winger to debate. And then also Tim Pool was cool with having me on again. So I'll be going back up to West Virginia for another debate. Razzle Cherry says, I would do more of that, but I'm not much of a debate guy. I like stating my opinion. That's about it. Well, hey, I appreciate you, hanging out with us while you're not hanging out with your Groyper friends and, at least listening, even if you don't agree with it. Sacred Snow says, handled back-end stuff, running up to the store for prep, huh? Prep H? No. We have to figure out how to, just sharing, because I want you guys to know that I'm not just running away because I feel like it. We have to define the roles for the social media editor for Valor Network and what they're responsible for on a day-to-day basis. And we need to define what the editor needs to do on a day-to-day basis, because effectively I can do it. Okay, I can do the editing, I can do the social media stuff, but obviously I want to be focused on you guys and I want to create content for you guys. And Valor feels the same way. They want me on the front end. They want me making content for you guys, right? But if the choice is me doing editing and then increasing the quality of the content and the quality of the thumbnails so we look professional versus bringing in some schmo who's just going to flub everything up, I would rather do substantive amounts of back-end work in order to make sure that the channel looks professional so we all grow, so we all make money, right? So, that's kind of what's going on. Valor Media, I know you're good faith, but these MFers are white supremacists that hide behind nationalism and Christianity. I don't agree. There's a spectrum, okay? There are probably people who are legitimately ethno-nats. Then there are people who are Christian nationalists, and they're also going to disagree on what levels of segregation are necessary. I think that Nick Fuentes has gone back and forth on how seriously he cares about race. So I don't think that, hey, look, it's a dog. Look, it's my dog. This is my dog. This is Indy. Indy. I'll have her say hi before we wrap up. And how many gorillas to take down a Necron? I would say, honestly, 10. Honestly, 10 of them. Pool's chat is going to spur. Of course, they hate me. But loving to hate me is going to set the chat on fire and then probably get Tim a bunch of hate donations. So he's probably excited for it. You should get some better hardware and lighting. I will. So my apologies. This is something that I was supposed to handle. There's a window right here that is actually along the horizon. And so I get blasted with the sun during the workday. So as a result, I need to get a blind here. And then I have a really nice 3-piece lighting setup. I have professional level lighting up and ahead and above me, but it gets blasted by the sun. And so normally I shoot at night, so it's not a big deal, but I need a big, almost like blackout curtain on this window, or else my professional lighting setup doesn't matter. Sunscreen? Yeah, I do need sunscreen, but I also like clarifying and correcting because half of what is said about Nick is totally fabricated slop. Well, dude, I mean, I DM Nick. One of you guys said that, Nick's live all the time and he's always looking for people to debate, but nobody will talk to him. And I DM'd him and we've debated before. And I said, hey, you want to do an Israel debate? And I never got a response. Now, bear in mind, I appreciate the fact that probably 90% of his DMs are death threats, but I have no problems talking with Nick. So I don't want you to get in trouble with your people. I don't want you to be like, oh, you should talk to Cotter. And then all the Groypers are like, oh, that guy's lame. He sucks, blah, 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 blah. But, if you have a way to contact him besides Twitter, I'll be happy to reach out to him. Like if he has an email or something, I'll take a look at it. White supremacy doesn't exist. We don't want mass migration of foreigners to intentionally replace the evil white colonizers. Well, I don't believe that statement, but it's okay. It's okay. 10 gorillas, good to know. Against a Necron, probably. And I do think 100 men could take on a gorilla, 100%. So give me 1 second. I'm going to show you guys my dog, and then we're going to wrap up. So, Indy, come here. Jump up. So this is Indy. Come here. Jump up. Oh, this is Indy. She's a mutt from Puerto Rico. She's called a Sato, and she's a good girl. She's a genuinely good dog. She knows how to fetch. She knows how to cuddle, and she doesn't shed a lot. So I didn't have to spend $10,000 on a Bernese mountain dog, unlike someone I know. I just went to the local shelter, and I got a dog, and it was brilliant, and I love it. Grassroots Touchdown for $20 says, Latin American and European cultures are wildly different and really shouldn't be treated separately, at least for Puerto Rico. There are many stragglers, but I hope you and Econoboy have a good chat. We will. All right, anyways. Parasocial love. If you don't want my kiss, that's totally fine. That might be a little gay, but I parasocially love you guys. Thank you for all the donations. Thank you for the excellent conversations in chat. Thank you for going over the, thanks for appreciating my dog. There's lots of people who appreciate the dog. And then thank you for chilling with me, hanging out with me, spending your day with me. It's been an absolute blessing so far. I'm hoping that we just steamroll this into an awesome project and we all make tons of money and we all help out the United States of America and we transform it into something beautiful and we give our kids, our collective children, a better world than what we currently have. So yeah. All right. Parasocial love to you and yours. Mwah. Don't accept my kiss if you don't want it. Bye. It's a brotherly kiss.